Hello, and welcome back to Video Games. I'm Tim Rogers. You are watching the Action Button review of Pac-Man, a video game designed by Toru Iwatani, developed by Namco, and released by Namco and Midway into worldwide arcades in June and October of 1980. For those dispossessive of an appetite adequate for consuming the totality of criticism contained in this program, let us begin with the bottom line. Pac-Man has come a long way from itself. Since probably the second or third largest game released after Pac-Man, mainstream media persons asked to speak for a moment on the medium of interactive electronic games have silently conspired to reheat an identical expression, that video games have come a long way since Pac-Man. The New York Times said it about The Last of Us Part 2 in 2020. Somebody else said it about Death Stranding in 2019. Somebody had to have said it about Red Dead Redemption 2 in 2018. Probably the same person who said it about Grand Theft Auto 5 in 2013, Grand Theft Auto 4 in 2008, and Grand Theft Auto 3 in 2001. Maybe somebody somewhere said it about Super Mario Bros. In 1985. I do recall that Computer and Video Games magazine said it about Q*bert in 1983, and Video Games and Computer Entertainment magazine said it about Street Fighter II in 1993. Computer and Video Games magazine also said it about Solomon's Key in 1987. Computer Games magazine said it about Oil's Will in 1984. Radio Electronics magazine said it about Donkey Kong in 1983. The Daily Aztec said it about Hitman Absolution in 2013. In 1999, the Lakewood Advocate said it about Lottie Minnick's Nickel Ranch Arcade. The Marin Independent Journal said it of Killer 7 in 2005. The New York Times said it about World of Warcraft in 2006 and The Walking Dead Season 2 in 2013. Angela Bassett, star of Mission Impossible Fallout, said it of Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege in 2015. Local 21 News said it about video game loot boxes in 2018. Electronic Gaming Monthly said it about Street Fighter II and Ren and Stimpy for Sega Genesis in 1994. IGN said it about Katamari Damacy in 2020, which later on I'm gonna get into why that's actually pretty fair. Kotaku.com said it about the Nintendo Wii in 2012. Wired said it about the Nintendo Wii in 2010. Game Set Watch said it about Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare 1 in 2009. Edinburgh University said it about careers in game development in 2018. Forbes said it about Call of Duty Black Ops 2 in 2012. The Mary Sue said it about The Last of Us in 2015. The University of Texas at San Antonio said it about video game violence in 2012. The Independent said it of Lara Croft in 2004. The Idaho Times News said it of Mortal Kombat 3 in 1995. In his 2005 memoir, The Game Doctor, Bill Kunkel said it of Tetris creator Alexei Pajitnov. Cashbox said it about Tron in 1982. Baseball card manufacturer Topps said it of their new line of Donkey Kong Jr. trading cards in 1983. ABC News said it about Naughty America, the game, in 2006. In 2007, GameSpy said it in the introduction to their listicle, The Top 25 Cinematic Moments in Video Games. In his 2012 book, Hooked Up, a new generation's surprising take on sex, politics, and saving the world, Jack Myers said it of online gaming. Ahoy Magazine said it of Karate Champ in 1986. Run Magazine said it of Paperboy in 1988. The book Game Over by David Sheff says it of Street Fighter II in 1993. The Kansas State Collegian said it of Halo 3 in 2007. The National said it of the Microsoft Kinect in 2010. Engadget said it about LA Noire in 2010. Eurogamer said it about The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker in 2012 and Slender in 2015. The Daily Mail said it about Grand Theft Auto 5 in 2013. The Budapest Times said it of StarCraft 2 in 2014. 94 FM, The Fish, said it of dangerous games your teens might be playing in 2014, while the Journal and Courier said it of video game charity programs in 2015. Inverse said it about the Emoji Movie in 2017. The Crocker Art Museum said it of Fortnite in 2018. The Courier said it of Fortnite in 2018. The Times said it of Fortnite in 2018. The BBC said it about women in the video game industry in 2019. PC Zone said it about Unreal Engine 3 in 2004. The Guardian said it about Portal in 2012. And Red Dead Redemption 2 in 2018. In his 2005 book Mastering Anger and Aggression the Brazelton Way, T. Barry Brazelton said it of violence in video games. Education Week said it about video game stereotypes in 2020. Fodor's Guide to Los Angeles said it about laser tag in 1990. And let's not forget, the 2012 book The Art of Video Games, From Pac-Man to Mass Effect, said it about Mass Effect. I'm pretty sure there's a lot more of them. That's just off the top of my head. In 2011, the TV network TNT said it about Angry Birds.
I just want to thank Alex Jaffe for researching that segment right there for me.
In my previous review on this channel of the 1993 game Doom, I declared somewhat bluntly that any claims of Doom's distance from Pac-Man amounted to an exaggeration. With perhaps grating terseness, I said, video games have and video games have not come a long way since Pac-Man. Not 20 minutes after I finished recording that spoken sentence here in this basement studio in front of this red 6K Hobbit camera in South Bend, Indiana, a pizza arrived. You may have seen this pizza on my Instagram. I took a slice of the pizza and I began angrily consuming it, as one does when one receives a pizza after having not eaten so much as a speck of sawdust in 12 hours. Then, I looked down at the pizza that still remained in the box. Looking at that pizza, I knew what I had to do. I photographed the pizza. I uploaded the photograph to my Instagram with a caption indicating that the Doom review had just finished shooting. Days later in Indianapolis, Indiana, my flight back to New York was canceled because of a hurricane which ultimately became no more than a regular tropical storm. Stuck in my parents' house for 24 more hours, I borrowed my mom's car, 2018 Kia Soul. That car sucks. I drove to Castleton Square Mall. I went to Hotbox Pizza. I called my dad. I asked if he wanted a pizza. I purchased a large pizza for myself and a large pizza for my dad. I took them home. My dad and I queued up the Kevin Costner and Gene Hackman film No Way Out on Amazon and made ready to consume our respective pizzas. I removed a slice. I looked down at the pizza, which still remained in the box on my lap. I knew what I had to do. I photographed that pizza and I uploaded the photograph to my Instagram. Just then, Gene Hackman was speaking within the television. His last name in my brain resounded like a rhyming gong in my skull. I knew that these two photographs would be enough information for my viewers to immediately begin speculating that the next Action Button review was probably Pac-Man. I observed the hashtag Goblin Bunker channel of discord.gg/actionbutton for a period of 2 weeks, during which only one viewer to my knowledge dared present the theory that I would review Pac-Man next. Consider yourself gifted 10 bunker dollars. I'll explain what bunker dollars do in a later episode. I won't mince words. The fact of the matter is this. The pizza in South Bend, Indiana spoke to me. It called me out. I glimpsed this delicious substance forming Pac-Man's iconic shape, and I felt regret beginning to well up. Mere minutes before, I had sat in front of a camera, this camera, looking like I had slept under a train the night before, because I had, and recorded myself reciting a premeditated and rehearsed, flippant, unjustified, hyperbolic statement. I decided then and there, looking at that pizza, that in order to truly embark upon this endeavor of meaningfully critiquing video games at great length in a series of YouTube videos that will persist in history long after my bones are gone, I must perform the conscientious video game critic's equivalent of paying my taxes. I thereby took it upon myself to review Pac-Man. Central to this piece is one prickly question. How far exactly have video games come since Pac-Man? Consider this review the definitive investigation. Right about now, you might find yourself turning to your significant other to ask, can this Muppetesque humanoid individual talk for over an hour about a game that has one screen, one level design, 4 enemies, no buttons, and 1 verb? Buddy, I can talk for 2. Before we can get into the 6 sizzling stories I composed for this edition of Action Button, let me tell you the details of the research process I performed prior to the composition. I played a lot of many versions of Pac-Man. For the entirety of the research process, I found myself separated by 2 landlords and a virus from the personal computer I use for all my content creation work. The research process began while I spent a summer month lying low in a friend of a friend's New Hampshire ski resort town mountaintop winter vacation home, and continued while I squatted in my own apartment waiting for the building management to pencil me permission to purchase furniture and move in my belongings from the storage unit in Brooklyn. We had the apartment walls painted gray. We removed the glass door from the shower. We reglazed the bathtub. We fixed a broken light switch. We replaced a bunch of outlets. All the while, I assessed Pac-Man with a multi-pronged philosophical toolset. In addition to playing as many versions of the game as I could buy on my Nintendo Switch, I downloaded numerous MAME ROMs while skeeving Wi-Fi off the Starbucks across the street. They're not even open. I had to stand outside with my laptop in the palm of my hand. Fun fact, Starbucks leaves their Wi-Fi on even when they're closed. I read websites and game facts on my phone. I watched lectures by game designers throughout history. On my phone in bed, on an air mattress, I silently, stone-coldly spectated multiple complete 5.5-hour perfect games of Pac-Man in an attempt to own my own skills at the elusive ancient game. Somewhere during all this, our air mattress got a hole in it. We tried to patch it with Gorilla Tape. That didn't work. Gorilla Tape sucks. Lying on my back on a flattened cardboard box in my bedroom that, as of this writing, still doesn't have a bed in it. As of this shooting, it does have a bed in it. I played Pac-Man on 2017's Namco Museum for Nintendo Switch. I also played the excellent NES Famicom version of Pac-Man on the similarly titled M2-developed Namco Museum Archives Volume 1, also for the Nintendo Switch. Namco Museum Archives Volume 1 was released for the Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Steam on June 30th, 2020. I'd recommend both of those collections, by the way. Namco Museum includes Rolling Thunder 1, Rolling Thunder 2, Sky Kid, and Tank Force. Namco Museum Archives Volume 1 includes the 1984 NES version of Pac-Man. The 1984 NES version of Pac-Man is absolutely my favorite version of the game. Before beginning the research process that preceded the writing of this review, I considered Pac-Man Championship Edition for the Xbox 360 my favorite version of Pac-Man. Before playing Pac-Man Championship Edition on my Xbox 360 in 2005, I considered Ms. Pac-Man my favorite version of Pac-Man. Now, it's number 3. Wow! I'm over 40 years old, and my opinion about something has changed. One opinion of mine that has not changed in almost 40 years is that my least favorite version of Pac-Man is still the Atari 2600 version. I confirmed this again in 2020 through carefully observing many YouTube videos. I've rolled the suitcase into the middle of my living room, figuratively and literally, and in a segment of this video, we will unpack the ramifications of that being the first version of Pac-Man I ever played as a ridiculous child back in 1983. Spoilers. I don't even consider it Pac-Man anymore. When we get to that part, know that I wrote that entire essay without even bothering to replay Pac-Man for the Atari 2600. I don't need to ever play it again. Watching it on YouTube videos is more than enough. It sure is a good thing that no one in my immediate proximity possesses an Atari 2600 game console, much less a Pac-Man cartridge for that Atari 2600 game console. M2's Namco Museum Archives Volume 1 also contains a brand new M2-developed, hilariously excellent 8-bit version of Pac-Man Championship Edition. Pac-Man Championship Edition originally released for the Xbox 360 in 2005 in commemoration of Pac-Man's 25th anniversary. This brand new remake arrives in 2020, just in time for Pac-Man's 40th anniversary. Wow. Pac-Man is almost as old as me. I'm older than one of the most legendarily, rhetorically old video games. When Pac-Man arrived in 1980, the world... Well, I don't know what the world said. In June of 1979, I exited the womb of somebody I'd see once in 1984 and then never again. My first memory of my life on Earth is of my mom speaking the words Pepperidge Farm in a high-ceilinged supermarket in August of 1982. My second memory is of my mom reading the words Dietz and Watson off a package of hot dogs 2 minutes later. Also in 1982. I've remembered literally everything since, and I hate it. So I can't confirm whether or not the world freaked out or lit on fire when Pac-Man materialized in arcades across North America in October of 1980 because I wasn't mentally there. Though I can tell you this much. Despite the historical hugeness of the event, I'm pretty sure no local news anchor said of it that video games have come a long way since Pac-Man. Maybe one especially brilliant future Pulitzer Prize winner said video games have come a long way since Pong. Though, knowing what I know about the editorial practices of local TV news networks, I'm pretty sure their overall critical faculties were not honed sharply enough to recognize such granular user experience design evolution in, let's be honest, simplistic expressions of a yet emerging newborn art form. What must it have been like to play Pac-Man in 1980? Again, I can't tell you. However, I can tell you what it was like to play Pac-Man in 1983. It was great. Even though I first played the 1981 Atari 2600 version, which I freely admit today is the worst possible version, Pac-Man was great to a 3-year-old. The 1981 Atari 2600 version of Pac-Man's graphics are dinky, lacking all the minute graphic design brushstrokes of the arcade original. The colors are all wrong. The maze is stretched horizontally. The sound grates abrasive. And the Atari 2600's controller, that infernal stiff joystick feels about as responsive as jabbing a chopstick into the permafrost ground of a tundra and twiddling it vainly in an attempt to manipulate the clouds overhead. I hate the Atari 2600 joystick. I hate anyone who doesn't hate the Atari 2600 joystick. It's a wonder it didn't turn me off from video games entirely. Whenever I could, I favored Atari 2600 games that used the little tennis paddle controller. I preferred Breakout to pretty much any other Atari 2600 game by virtue of the required controller alone. I was a discerning 3-year-old. At the time I first played Pac-Man at age 3 in February of 1983, I only possessed 6 months of recorded memory. I'd been playing video games for 3 of those months. One day in September of 1982, my dad had plunked a cardboard box full of plastic and wires down in front of the 25-inch living room television. My dad said, and I quote, "Yous boys are gonna get a kick out of this." My dad had been 22 years old, a recent college graduate and a newly enlisted trainee in the United States Army when Pong had released in November of 1972. Between then and his presentation of a cardboard box full of video games to me and my big brother, he had risen to the rank of captain in the US Army, with his detailed job description including the words, "computer guy." As an aspiring computer guy and a single white dude from West Virginia in his early 20s, he had accumulated many technological tchotchkes, including an Atari 2600 and, if I recall correctly, and I do, 12 cartridges, which he and my mother, and by extension myself and my big brother, called game tapes. My big brother and I had yet to know what a video game was, much less that they were going to eventually own one of 2 of our lives. If it had been only 5 years later and you'd put a box of 12 Nintendo Entertainment System cartridges down in front of us and said, "Bon appetit, little buddies," we'd have screamed until we dry heaved, and dry heaved until we were unconscious. Back in 1982, we took it in stride. Such was the impressiveness of an Atari 2600 game, much less a box full of them. We worked our way through those 12 game tapes with an infantile sort of forensic curiosity. Anyone who has spectated the ever-presence of Ridge Racer at the launch of the PlayStations 1, 2, and 3 will likely take interest in the fact that the first of the 12 games my big brother selected after a long and stareful selection process that day as my dad set up the Atari 2600 was none other than Activision's Grand Prix, the box of which portrayed one cartoon car passing several others, its heroic swerve around an oil slick depicted by a multicolored rainbow trail. Moments later, Grand Prix was the first video game I ever saw, and minutes later, think about 28, 32 minutes later, it was the first video game I ever played. Grand Prix, designed by Pitfall's David Crane, presents the player a top-down, horizontally scrolling view of race cars. I liked Grand Prix. I liked it about as much as I liked my alphabet blocks and eating Star Wars cookies. I liked Grand Prix so much that when I later learned the name of its designer, David Crane, in an article about the game David Crane's Amazing Tennis, it lodged in my brain forever. Grand Prix's unorthodox side-scrolling view of top-down motor vehicles perhaps inspired the game I've been designing for going on 4 years. Truckheck. David Crane's name's juxtaposition alongside Amazing Tennis perhaps inspired the full name of Truckheck. Michael Kerwin's Truckheck. I'd call it Tim Rogers's Truckheck, though who really wants to say Rogers's? I don't even want to say Rogers's. I don't like the sound of that S'. Good thing I don't have to ever talk about myself in third person. Much as I liked Grand Prix, it sucked. It sucked then and it sucked today. It was then as it is now, a baby's toy, a gnarled plaything for knuckle-dragging rubes. Grand Prix races depicted slow-moving opponents so brain-dead, the inanimate oil-slick obstacles practically had PhDs in comparison. Though the vehicles accelerated and slowed with something resembling physical friction, I never felt like a participant in the game. I felt like the game was letting me control the car because someone had told it to be nice to me. I haven't played the game since that day, and I don't think I should because I like how crystallized that critical thought of it is. Such is the messy mind of a 3-year-old. Naturally, the second game we played was The Empire Strikes Back. Had my dad purchased this game in 1982 and not shared it with his children? I have known what Star Wars is since literally my first conscious memory. Had he not shown us The Empire Strikes Back on the Atari 2600 until that day? What was he doing with Atari 2600 Empire Strikes Back in private? Every toy we owned was Star Wars. At the time, we had no idea that the Atari 2600 game, The Empire Strikes Back, was just a shallow, ham-handed retread of Midway's infinitely more design-nuanced Defender. We enjoyed the raw thrill of seeing AT-ATs and snow speeders, more or less replicated pixel identical to their cinematic counterparts, at least as far as a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old were concerned. We played the game for several hours. Mostly my brother played and I watched. I recall an unease building throughout the experience. I was yet no expert on the plot subtleties of The Empire Strikes Back. Return of the Jedi didn't even exist, so we didn't know yet that Empire Strikes Back was the best one. Though The Empire Strikes Back, the video game's ironclad clinging to the Battle of Hoth, rode up on my soul like a cheap pair of footy pajamas. I distinctly recall wondering at one point, where's Darth Vader? Then it was, where's Han Solo? Finally, distinctly remember thinking, where's Yoda? So it was that at the age of 3 years and 3 months, with the second ever video game I had ever played, I began to lay the foundations for a lifetime of expecting things from media. Initially displeased with video games as we were, we soon returned to our G.I. Joes and our Star Wars toys, with which we could more than replicate the entire plot of The Empire Strikes Back. We could speculate about Episode 6. My brother even began writing Episode 7, in which Darth Vader and Cobra Commander buy a Lego house together. We on occasion tentatively dipped back into that box of video games. My brother decided he liked Breakout, and I humored him until I also liked Breakout. I chose the game Asteroids as my repeat favorite, firstly because its box indicated it involved space, which is where Star Wars happens. I shortly fell into an introspective sort of post-toddler obsession with Asteroids. The heavy metal crashing loudness of its hideous sounds, the brutal chaos of its explosions, the sad popping finality of player death, the mysterious frictionlessness of the player ship as it slowed effortfully to a stop, the ship's brain-blasting tendency to warp off the edge of the screen and wrap around instantly to the other. Asteroids presented me a play school perfect Zen garden of video friction. Asteroids thereafter was my game. I carried it around our apartment like a trophy, much like the 13-year-old kid I would later know in middle school who carried around Road Rash. Except I never took Asteroids out of the house. That kid was 10 years older than I had been, and he took road rash to school. I've got to admit, that guy was weirder than me. Trust me, I definitely don't continue to carry an Atari 2600 Asteroids cartridge around with me everywhere I go. Hey, where's my glass of water? I need a glass of water, because I drink a lot of water while I'm recording these videos, because I talk a lot. Is it over here?
No. It's just so dark.
Hand it to me. Yet all those weeks I spent with an Atari 2600 Asteroids game tape in my unmistakably clean for a 3-year-old hands, I still regarded the game with a shallow interest. My relationship with the game remained casual. I did think about it a little bit at night, plotting flight paths and blaster angles, though the game never actually spoke to me. It was a toy. A superlatively good toy, though a toy nonetheless. Nowadays, Asteroids means nothing to me. I don't care about it anymore. It's not like I carry an Asteroids cartridge around with me everywhere I go. Something a serial killer would do. My big brother was playing Missile Command one day when my dad walked in and said, "What is that, Missile Command? Why ain't you guys playing Pac-Man?" He put in Pac-Man and showed us Pac-Man. We watched my dad play Pac-Man for 40 minutes. He was pretty good. I can recite his instructive monologue off the top of my head. "You're this guy, and you're in this maze. You eat these wafers. The ghosts chase you. Don't let them kill you. Eat a pill like this, and then you can kill them." I was 3 years and 8 months old at this point. I knew what a Rubik's Cube was, though I didn't know it was something one could solve. I thought it was just something you hold in your hands, click and chalk around its colors, and gently squeeze from time to time, palpating the buckle and quiver of the plastic. My brain was a spaghetti of eels when I watched my dad play Pac-Man. The eels in my brain began to yell as I watched my big brother much more poorly play Pac-Man. By the time I myself played Pac-Man, I had already watched 1 hour of Pac-Man. When you're under 22 years old, an hour feels about 6 times longer than it does when you're 40. When you're not even old enough to be in kindergarten yet, an hour feels like a week. By the moment I stepped up to the plate, Pac-Man was already the first good video game I had ever played. Let me run down the list of 3-year-old me's newborn infant requirements for a good video game. Pac-Man had a clear goal, eat all the things, clear opponents, the ghosts whose movements always eluded my understanding, and clearly dynamic design mechanics. If I ate one of the pills, I became the bad guy. That was the way I phrased it in my mind's voice when I was 3 years old. As hours turned into days and days into weeks, I slowly untangled some unspoken, unspeakable understanding of the slightly differing motives of each of Pac-Man's menacing phantom oppressors. Pac-Man represents the first good video game I ever played, if we define good the way the Legend of Zelda series director Eiji Aonuma does. Aonuma says that a good puzzle in a video game makes the player feel smart. Doesn't actually teach the player anything, it makes them feel smart. I felt smart for sort of figuring out Pac-Man's ghosts as an almost 4-year-old. For a period of 2 months, my brother and I played this terrible version of Pac-Man just about every day. We played it in the afternoons. We played it at night until it was time to brush our teeth. He got pretty good at it. I got pretty good at it. We became aware of the Pac-Man cartoon series, which we had until then ignored because we hadn't played the video game. Eventually, we stopped playing Pac-Man. Maybe everybody did. My brother and I never realized that in the 3 years between its inception and our ever laying hands on Pac-Man, an entire AAA video game franchise's worth of iteration vortex had befallen the character, his game, and the very concept of a video game genre. Before we even ever knew what it was, Pac-Man had performed irreversible good damage to the burgeoning core values of electronic game design. 6 years later, which, if you're keeping score, felt like 20 of a 40-year-old's years to a 3, 4, 5, and then 6, 7, and then 8-year-old, I played Pac-Man on the Nintendo Entertainment System, colloquially known then as the NES, or NES, if you're a weirdo. This was Namco's 1984 Famicom port, published in the United States by Tengen in 1988. At this particular period in time, my family was living in proximity to McConnell Air Force Base in Wichita, Kansas. Every Friday night, my mom made pizza. Every Friday afternoon, my mom stopped at the video store, Pop and Go Video, on the way to pick my brother and I up at school. My taste in video games thus evolved at the bizarre pace of my mom's sudden presumptions. We got into my mom's car after school one Friday afternoon, and my brother grabbed the crinkly plastic Pop and Go video bag, flipped over the rectangular plastic VHS cases in search of the square plastic case containing a video game, and instantly made a "we need to talk about Kevin" face. My brother then said, and I quote, "Mom, I told you to rent Trojan." My brother had been obsessed with the Capcom game Trojan, the box of which he had seen at a KB toy store. My mom was like, and I quote, "I am not renting yous boys a game called Trojan. That's filthy." My brother then said, "Pac-Man is for R words." Except he actually said the R word. Robocops. That's what he said. He said Robocops. Pac-Man is for Robocops, is what he said. It was 1988. We'd seen Robocop. He didn't like Robocop. Anything that wasn't cool was for people who were like Robocop. His favorite scene was that scene where Murphy gets his hand shot off. Actually, can I just take a second to say that, yes, it was 1988. Me and my brother had seen Robocop. We were white. We grew up on military bases. I said that word a lot, all the time, about lots of stuff, about people who did stuff I didn't like, stuff that I didn't like. We said that word. I'm not trying to say my brother was exceptional for saying it. It might be what it comes across as in this script. I said that word all the time. I don't say it anymore. And you know what? I don't miss it. I don't know if you've noticed from any of the other reviews I've made, other videos of mine you might have watched, you can take one word away from me, I'm still gonna have a pretty goddarn good time with the other several tens of thousands. My brother said Pac-Man is for R words. And my mom said, "I thought yous boys liked Pac-Man." As moms do, she had dredged up a memory ancient and shameful without any ulterior motive or ill intent. My brother made an exasperated sound, blowing a huge gust of air out of his mouth. I take from this today 2 truths. First of all, if our house had been on the other side of the school, maybe my mom would have picked us up from school before going to the video store, and we would have been able to pick games ourselves. In that case, maybe my video game taste would have evolved quite differently. Without my mom picking the occasional piece of weird trash, how would I have learned what a bad game was? Without learning what a bad game was, how would I have learned what a good game actually was? Without the roguelike-like element whereby my mom occasionally rented the bad games again months later without warning, and without my upbringing stressing that I should always strive to get my money's worth, meaning I played those bad games again all weekend, and I let my mom see me playing them because I didn't want her to feel bad, how else would I have ever developed a razor-sharp critical faculty? Without that, who'd be watching these videos? I probably wouldn't even be making these videos. So, thanks, Mom. The other thing I know today is that if you'd shown me the NES version of Pac-Man first, and the Atari 2600 version of Pac-Man never, I'd have bought that Pac-Man t-shirt I saw at Urban Outfitters last year. However, by the time I finally played the arcade faithful NES version of Pac-Man, I had seen RoboCop. I had experienced the cathartic arrival of a newborn baby brother. And, perhaps most importantly to the trajectory of the rest of my life, I had played Super Mario Brothers. Super Mario Brothers had sufficed as a Pac-Man fever vaccination. Having said that, in 1988, I beheld Pac-Man with all the dignity and wisdom an 8-year-old can muster about a toy he played with 20 years ago. That is to say, I immediately preferred the black background and blue maze walls to whatever the Atari version had been going for, and I thanked God that the ghosts did not flash constantly as they moved around. Pac-Man on the NES was an excellent game, excellently presented. I played it all day, the entire weekend. Before my mom had started the car on her way to return it Sunday night, I had already booted up The Legend of Zelda again. Though I did play it all day, all weekend. In this review of Pac-Man, I'd like to archaeologize a kernel of sincere universal truth from the experience of that bygone weekend. Because of that weekend, I realized that Pac-Man is great. I sat before Pac-Man and let him talk. I gave him the respect I'd elsewhere given my grandparents in Delaware and great uncle and great aunt in West Virginia. I played Pac-Man that weekend in a churchy state of brain, just sort of gently knowing that I was going to be playing video games for the rest of my life, and just sort of gently feeling the way an 8-year-old does that this one was important to me like no other. Yet that after that brief weekend, it would be going away, and I would be going elsewhere forever. Unless my mom, for some reason, decided to rent it again, which, auspiciously, she did not. It occurs to me that reviewing Pac-Man requires me to wrestle with two transient questions. Firstly, did Pac-Man save video games? And first and a halfly, if so, did Pac-Man save video games from what? And secondly, given its name's synonymity with the ancient history of video games, why does Pac-Man, unlike, for example, Super Mario Brothers, lack a comparable cult of similarly devout worshippers today in 2020? In typing all that out and then proofreading it and then editing it into something I can speak aloud without wondering if the FBI is watching, I realized these two questions converge into one question. Did Pac-Man sacrifice himself for the good of video games? Is Pac-Man a Pac-martyr? Without Pac-Man and its 2-year fireworks display of spin-offs and tweaked versions of half-sequels, how many nowadays legendary video game designers would have remained normal humans? Shigeru Miyamoto himself has gone on record as saying that without Pac-Land, Pac-Man's odd accidental invention of the side-scrolling mascot platformer, he wouldn't have ever dreamed of Super Mario Brothers. When I pore over a statement like that, I start thinking about the original Pac-Man and Donkey Kong, Super Pac-Man and Mario Brothers. I think what's on the tip of probably all of our minds' tongues, that Pac-Man is the nucleus vortex at the center of video games. Asteroids, Missile Command, Space Invaders, Pong. These were little games. These were insubstantial games. It pains me to call them that. I have many wonderful memories of all of those games. I have memories of playing Space Invaders with my dad, the way some other people might have memories of playing Pong with their grandmother, the way some other people might have memories of playing Wii Sports Tennis with their grandmothers. To that nostalgia, I say, your grandmother didn't play Wii Sports Tennis or Pong with you because Wii Sports Tennis or Pong are dramatically important works of game design. Your grandmothers played Wii Sports Tennis or Pong with you because you were talking to her and offering her a venue for spending time with you. I have a darker, hazier memory than this of the day my big brother and I saw Super Mario Brothers for the first time at a rich kid's house, and then we told our mom we wanted a Nintendo. She said, and I quote, "Yous boys already have an Atari!" To which I instantly retorted, "Mom, Nintendo is the real video games." What profundity I produced by accident that day. I realize now that Pac-Man was the beginning of what my 7-year-old self pitched to Mom as real video games. In order to unpack what I might have meant by this, we're gonna have to get on our hands and knees with a toothbrush to extract every last morsel of Pac-Man grime from between the tiles on Nintendo's floor. To lay the first brick in the foundation of our towering critique of Pac-Man, I present one simple observation. Pac-Man is simply a game about movement. Other games of Pac-Man's day had movement in them. Some games, like Grand Prix, had expressed dynamic acceleration and deceleration. Some games, like Asteroids, had even given movement passive effects, like inertia. Some games, like Lunar Lander, had even been entirely about one hyper-specific and difficult movement-related task. However, had a game ever done so much with movement as Pac-Man? In Pac-Man, it's not how you move, it's where you move, it's why you move, it's deciding when you move. It's about what happens around you as you move. In plain terms, what happens is your enemies scheme and move, and your resources diminish. Pac-Man's only player-executed verb is thus move. Other verbs, such as eat and collect, happen as the player moves. The player's movement path depends on the flavor of the moment, and Pac-Man only has 2 game flavors, by the way: be hunted and hunt. Meat and potatoes. With just one level design, one active verb, one screen, and 4 enemies, Pac-Man paints a portrait of an unthinkable sport unimaginable in any more meaty medium. Most popular video games back then in Pac-Man's day took something or other from sports. Let's not forget that the very first mass-marketed video game, Pong, was a Stone Age primitivization of the sport of tennis. Breakout felt like a single-player racquetball. Even Asteroids possessed such a soccer-like purity that it inspired one child to make a soccer-like Asteroids-like game 37 years later. Pac-Man, however, abstracted and defamiliarized sports into virtual unrecognizability. I'd forgive you if you've been playing Pac-Man your entire life and never thought about sports even once. I, however, have been calling the ghost house in the center of Pac-Man's stage the hockey box ever since that weekend my mom rented the NES version for me and my brother. Whether Pac-Man designer Toru Iwatani was inspired by the penalty box in ice hockey when he dreamt up the hockey box in Pac-Man, I can't say. Though I can say that Pac-Man's original English name, Puck-Man, contains a hockey reference. Or does it? Wikipedia says that the English title was Puck-Man because the circular hero, quote-unquote, resembled a puck. However, the Japanese title, Pac-Man, includes the word paku, a 2.5-syllable word which, when repeated, paku, becomes the Japanese onomatopoeia for representing a mouth opening and closing multiple times in rapid succession, as though chomping repeatedly on some peskily persistent, repetitive food item. We could localize the Japanese name Pac-Man, therefore, as Mr. Chompers, Chew Buddy, Munch Boy, or Nash Dude. Whatever the case may be, North American businessmen, assuming the worst in children and fearing easy vandalism, nixed the name Puck-Man, settling instead on the more mysterious Pac-Man. I'd like to take a moment here to commend Namco 40 years later on the names of their early arcade games. Pac-Man, Dig Dug, Galaga, Galaxian, Xevious, Bosconian, Mappy, Baraduke, Grobda, and Druaga remain today remarkably pleasant words to simply say out loud. Actually, can we go back and I just want to say those words out loud again. I'm sorry. Pac-Man, Dig Dug, Galaga, Galaxian, Xevious, Bosconian, Mappy, Baraduke, Grobda, Druaga. The joy that went into the graphic design of each of these games' ancient logos palpably emanates from the upper right corners of Wikipedia pages, even today. One feels more than a fragment of the shape of a transcendental meditation mantra lurking within each of these mysterious from elsewhere word-like letter collections. Even the less abstract Rally X rallyingly exudes a product design confidence seldom residing in any marketed product, physical or virtual, today. Namco, congratulations. As far as we are concerned here at Action Button, in the years between 1980 and 1985 alone, you established an unbreakable record for the best video game names of all time. Please accept the Action Button Godfather Award. If our game Truckheck is any success, then we'll be taking it back from you after we release our next 8 games. Wait, hold on. Namco had a lot of really good arcade game names in the 90s, too. So hold on. I want to Google Namco arcade games. I'm overwhelmed here. Wow, I don't know. Nobody better at naming games. Okay. I have composed a top 10 list. Before I do the top 10 list, I'm just going to give you all my favorite Namco games names. Are you ready for this? I wrote them down. I've excluded the top 10 because I'm going to do those at the end. Hold on. GB, Bombi, Cutie Q, Navarone, Galaga, Dig Dug, Xevious, Mappy, Pack and Pal, Fozon, Gaplus, Druaga, Grobda, Baraduke, Motos, Thunder Scepter, Ordine, Philios, Solvalu, Emeraldia, Cybersled, Aqua Jet, Panic Park. And now, Action Button presents the top 10 best Namco video game names of all time. Number 10, Rally X. Number 9, Bosconian. Number 8, Pac-Man. Number 7, Galaxian. Number 6, Xvania. Number 5, King and Balloon. Number 4, Wonder Momo. Number 3, Tinkle Pit. Number 2, Dirt Fox. And according to Action Button, the number 1 best Namco video game name of all time could not possibly be anything other than Lucky and Wild. I'm actually thinking I did Panic Park a little dirty. Panic Park could have been in there. Top 11. Panic Park is definitely number 11. Put the list up. Wait, is the list over here? Put the list back up and have Panic Park there at number 11. I'm happy with the list now. I definitely should have put the Outfoxies on that list somewhere. You know, come to think of it, Rally X is a game I never played until 2001 at an arcade in Saitama. We'll revisit this arcade in Saitama later in this review, though for now it's noteworthy to point out that Rally X, which was developed at the same time as Pac-Man and released during the same year as Pac-Man, looks like a whole different video game hardware generation from Pac-Man. If you looked at Rally X and Pac-Man side by side today, you might think that they clearly came out at least 2 years apart. Rally X's full-color, top-down, multi-screen, high-speed, scrolling car chase mazes stand in shocking contrast to Pac-Man's black background and single-screen static maze level design. Back in 1980, Namco poured more resources into promoting Rally X. They probably poured more resources into developing it as well. Remember my anecdote about my big brother and I playing the Atari 2600 for the first time? The first game my big brother chose to play was Grand Prix because it had cars on it. It shouldn't surprise us today that Namco's marketers knew this and thus spent more on Rally X than they spent on Pac-Man. Now, Rally X isn't a violent game per se, though it is a game that immediately evokes memories of or notions about the real world. To drive a fast car recklessly fulfills a human wish, perpetuated by films and television. To manipulate a loud floating yellow mouth in its quest to eat undisturbed by ghosts fulfills no naturally existing person's life's dream. Except mine. Between Rally X and Pac-Man, we can accomplish a study in theme. Simply put, Rally X has a theme, that of race cars, and Pac-Man kind of doesn't. The game's makers expect likers of cars to gravitate to Rally X. Meanwhile, Pac-Man glows there in a dark arcade, beckoning those who magnetize toward the abstract. Rally X tells a one-note story in instant visuals. That story in full is, a car is driving and some other cars are also driving. Pac-Man asks us to write a story in our heads as we play. Themes aside, these two games scratch the same itch with similar tools. Players of either game in 1980 might plunk in the first quarter simply in anticipation of enjoying some cars or enjoying something weird. The second quarter, however, happens because the player enjoys the sensation of outwitting pursuers in a maze. Rally X scrolls. Pac-Man does not. Rally X has cars. Pac-Man does not. Rally X was successful. Pac-Man was far more successful. We talk about Pac-Man today. One child who played Pac-Man in 1983 later went on to produce a 2-hour-long YouTube video review of Pac-Man in 2020. This same child did not compose a 2-hour video review of Rally X. In summary, Pac-Man won the race to the history books because its game design compelled its players to look between the lines of its abstract theme. Pac-Man's lack of a plot-bearing resemblance to any aspect of our tangible world allowed players to accept its claustrophobic confines and its peculiar rules. I won't do anything so bold as to say that video games are better without stories, though I will say that Pac-Man is unequivocally better than Rally X. Rally X has a story. Pac-Man does not. Well, maybe you'd say Pac-Man does have a story. If I asked you to explain Pac-Man's story, what would you say? It's got fruit and ghosts in it? Pac-Man eats fruit and avoids ghosts. Eating an Energizer gives him the power to eat the ghosts. If you consider this a plot, buddy, I got a cinematic universe to sell you. Okay, let's say this is a plot. Then what is the maze? What is this heck in which we find ourselves? It looks like it probably stinks like paint thinner. Is it the city of a nighttime? Is Pac-Man a private detective? Are the dots he eats the lines on the road he drives in search of clues? Are the ghosts assassins sent to kill the man who knows too much? Are the power pellets clues he finds, frightening his pursuers into fleeing town? By eating them, does he arrest them? Is the hockey box jail? When the ghosts leave the hockey box, is that a prison break? Or is a sinister tycoon bailing them out so they can get the job done this time? Or is Pac-Man a criminal fresh out of jail, trying to enjoy a night on the town in a dark city of freedom? And the ghosts, the ghoulish cops who'd try to stop a man from eating some fruit just because of something he didn't even do? Or is Pac-Man a serial killer, the ghost's internal monologuous representatives of his former victims, and the Energizer's physician-prescribed antipsychotic medication administered at a psychiatric facility? Is the maze jail? Or is the maze brain jail? We can write any of 1,000 narratives to describe the goings-on in this neon-like nighttime maze, yet none of these narratives will ever add up to perfect sense, because Pac-Man's rules accomplish such an airtightness that any true game detective could only ever conclude that Pac-Man is simply about itself a world that exists only for the playing of one sport. Pac-Man eats dots and avoids ghosts. If he eats a pill, he can eat the ghosts. Ghosts try to catch Pac-Man while he eats dots. After Pac-Man eats a pill, the ghosts run away. eat a ghost and it retreats to the hockey box in the center of the screen. After a brief interval has elapsed, the eaten ghost will depart the hockey box. Eat all the dots and pills to complete the level. Notice there are no dots surrounding the hockey box. Occasionally, a fruit appears beneath the hockey box. Eat it for bonus points. Waste too much time, and the fruit vanishes, dead on the vine. When Pac-Man eats a dot or a pill, it disappears from the field. The player or spectator can tell at a glance what portion of a level remains to be eaten. The player or spectator can tell at a glance which ghost is where. The learned player or spectator can read the next several seconds of play by triangulating Pac-Man's position, the ghost's individual positions, and the positions of any crucial yet-to-be-gotten tasties. The ghost's different colors differentiate them visually, until the player eats a pill, at which point the ghosts all change to identical colors, expressions, and movement speed. We'll come back to the importance of this point a little bit later. For now, we must discuss the ghosts themselves. First of all, are they ghosts? How do we actually know what a ghost looks like? The ghosts in Pac-Man might not be actual spectral representatives of dead flesh beings. They might possess actual substance of their own. Each ghost in Pac-Man has a distinct personality. Remember that I played Pac-Man first on the Atari 2600, lacking most of the nuance of the arcade version's artificial intelligence. However, not until I was alone with the freedom to infinitely replay the Nintendo version did I truly understand the genius of the ghost's patterns. These four enemies certainly work together as a team to thwart the player's attempts to eat everything in a level. 3 of the 4 ghosts begin a level inside the hockey box. The red ghost starts outside. The other 3 ghosts exit in turn as the player progresses through the level. After exiting the hockey box, the ghosts enter a holding pattern in the corners of the maze. Expert players call this the scatter phase of a level. During this phase, they patrol their respective corners. When the phase mysteriously ends, the ghosts enter their artificial intelligence routines. The red ghost, Blinky, immediately targets Pac-Man and heads directly for his location. The pink ghost, Pinky, exits the hockey box immediately as a level starts and then targets a space exactly 4 pellets in front of Pac-Man. For clarity's sake, when I say targets 4 pellets in front of Pac-Man, I mean 4 spaces in Pac-Man's exact facing direction. This might mean that Pinky targets a wall. An old overflow error in Pac-Man's game programming has it so that if Pac-Man is facing up, Pinky targets 4 tiles ahead and 4 tiles to the left of Pac-Man. This error leads to Pinky changing his target quite erratically, though Pinky overall more or less seeks to get in front of and ambush Pac-Man. The blue ghost, Inky, targets a more mysterious location in front of Pac-Man. According to Pac-Man's game programming, Inky calculates Blinky's distance against a tile 2 tiles in front of Pac-Man, and then doubles that distance along the same vector. This multifactorial approach to targeting Pac-Man assures that Inky will take a different path through the maze than Blinky or Pinky. If Pac-Man stands still, assuming all 4 ghosts are equidistant from Pac-Man, Blinky will catch Pac-Man first. Pinky will be 4 spaces in front of Pac-Man when Blinky catches him, and Inky will be 4 spaces away from Pinky along Blinky's heading vector. If you didn't think Pac-Man resembled sports before I started describing these ghosts, how about now? I mean, look at this. This is as football as it gets. We haven't even gotten to the 4th ghost. The orange ghost, Clyde, comes out of the hockey box last and then follows Blinky's paradigm. He targets Pac-Man's exact location until he gets within 8 dots of Pac-Man, at which point he retreats to a fixed tile in the lower left corner of the maze, coincidentally also his target during the scatter phase. The ghosts are thus as single-minded in their goals as horror movie monsters. After one or the other ghost kills us enough times, we begin to develop miniature narrative relationships between ourselves and the ghosts. With these simple paradigms in place, the 4 ghosts plentifully populate and pleasantly crowd the dotted little cartoon jail dungeon inside the television to the delight of players everywhere. One glance over the shoulder of a novice player and an abject newcomer might think, what an excellently balanced work of graphic design this thing is with these 4 colorful ghosts occupying different zones, and this little wonderfully animated yellow biting circle floating plumply along a path? Aha! I can plainly see that the ghosts pursue the circle. How thrilling! On the turn of a moment, the ghosts' simple artificial intelligences impress even the first-time observer with dynamics tantamounting Force's narrative. We need only glance at the screen for a moment to understand that the ghosts work as a team, and that Pac-Man, the outnumbered chomping circle, clearly represents the underdog in this unfair sporting contest, and that, obviously, the underdog is the one under the lone player's control. As Pac-Man progresses through a level, patterns change. Subtly, the ghosts will occasionally all agree to enter the scatter phase a few seemingly random times per level. Most opaquely, Blinky, the red ghost, speeds up as Pac-Man eats dots. Blinky speeds up when a certain number of dots are remaining on the field. When Blinky speeds up to his maximum speed, die-hard Pac fans call him Cruise Elroy for a reason that literally nobody remembers. I asked Mike Micah of the Emeryville, California video game studio Other Ocean if he knew the reason. Even he didn't know. If he doesn't know, nobody knows. Personally, I think the name Cruise Elroy is ridiculous, and I despise historical events I can't trace back to a precise origin. I only reference this term here in this review because if I didn't, some freak in the comments would mention it, insinuating that they were telling me something I didn't know. Novice players need only know that the red ghost speeds up as the level proceeds. Yet, aspiring experts as far back as the game's release week in October of 1980 decoded the behavior change in short time. Blinky speeds up in level 1 of Pac-Man when exactly 20 of the maze's 244 dots remain. Continue to view this sporting little cartoon game with an analytical eye, and the player will notice that the ghosts always stop to make decisions before turning corners. Consider this long enough, and the player comes to understand that the ghosts' pathfinding skills are quite short-sighted. The ghosts always favor what is the fastest path if, and only if, doing so immediately brings about their victory. The ghosts have no long game. Micro moments after figuring this out, the player's eyes might immediately open to the dirty side of the game design. Let's remember for a moment that back when it came out in 1980, Pac-Man represented a AAA video game. That may seem ridiculous given what a AAA video game looks like today, though when we poke at Pac-Man's internal clock workings, we see a rich interlocking of systems that rival any core mechanics of modern games. Pac-Man presents us a textbook first chapter-worthy specimen of game design and level design arranged in cuisine-like proportion to one another. In no other game in existence do we see such a perfect sliver of game design paired so sublimely with a geometrically unimpeachable level design. You can learn almost everything you need to know about level design and game design from studying Pac-Man. Pac-Man is an action puzzle, real-time strategy, one-player, four-enemy abstract sports game. The player's goal is to eat the dots while avoiding the ghosts. When the player eats a pill, also known as an energizer, they can eat the ghosts for a limited time. At the exact moment Pac-Man eats an energizer, all of the ghosts change to the same color. This color change represents the only time the game of Pac-Man ever explicitly hides anything from the player. When the ghosts change color, it's up to you, the player, to remember the identities of the ghosts so as to plan your position relative to them when the Energizer's effects wear off. Or, better yet, eat all four of them before they can change back. Aside from the color of the ghosts after the ingestion of an Energizer, Pac-Man visibly hides no other game object. What Pac-Man hides is its feelings. Pac-Man positively abounds with micro-muscular memorable sleights of hands of nebulous timing and dubious execution. Now we're getting into the dirty part of the game design. Under Pac-Man's shiny veneer of iconic graphic design and sparkling, pristine core game design fundamentals lurks a dirty tendency. Though Pac-Man's core remains visibly pleasantly familiar throughout a play experience, sacred tiny elements behind the scenes invisibly change like clockwork, both within a level and from round to round. As an individual level of Pac-Man progresses, the ghost's patterns change. As the game of Pac-Man progresses from level to level, the timings of the changes generally shorten and the speeds of in-game objects fluctuate. Pac-Man's user interface does not explicitly specify or otherwise indicate any of these changes. It's up to the player to feel them. A wonderful document called the Pac-Man Dossier, written by one Jamie Pittman, lays all of these timings bare in precise detail. If you peruse this document, you'll quickly see that the first 4 stages of Pac-Man suffice as a sort of on-ramp. The 5th through 20th stages represent the difficulty plateau, and stages 21 and up present the difficulty apex. We qualify difficulty in Pac-Man by speed. Shorter timing windows and more even speed differentials between Pac-Man and the ghosts make for a more quote-unquote difficult game. Inside an individual level, difficulty resides in ghost phases. In the first stage, ghosts will enter scatter mode for 7 seconds and then chase mode for 20 seconds. After 2 repetitions, scatter mode shortens to 5 seconds. After a 4th scatter, the ghosts enter a chase mode, which does not end. In stages 2 through 4, the 3rd chase mode is 17 minutes and 13 seconds long, followed by a scatter mode exactly 1 frame long, meaning the ghosts change direction, return to their target corners, and then immediately re-enter an endless chase mode. Levels 5 and up, right up until Pac-Man crashes on stage 256, feature 3 5-second scatter, 20-second chase mode cycles, followed by 1 17-minute, 17-second chase mode, followed by a 1-frame scatter mode, followed by an infinite chase mode. This is the timing plateau, which we can refer to as true Pac-Man timing. Likewise, the length of time during which ghosts turn blue and vulnerable when Pac-Man eats an Energizer decreases as levels go on. From level 21 and up, the ghosts don't get frightened at all. They just change direction for a moment, giving Pac-Man some breathing room. Furthermore, the ghosts move more quickly overall as levels progress. Pac-Man himself starts slow in level 1, speeds up considerably in levels 2 through 4, reaches 100% speed from levels 5 to 20, then cruelly slows back down to 90% speed from levels 21 through 256. From level 21 till the game crashes, the ghosts overall move more quickly than Pac-Man, and Pac-Man can no longer eat them. This is the game designer's way of kicking the casual player off the machine so the publisher can make some more money. Yet Pac-Man's game designer, Toru Iwatani, had a sense of pride in his work, because even at its difficulty apex, Pac-Man is still a sublimely playable game, if not one that you can memorize exact patterns and play it exactly the same way 235 times. Even when the game removes the thrill of eating one's ghostly pursuers, effectively eliminating perhaps its most crucially satisfying mechanic, all of Pac-Man's soul remains complete and unlobotomized. The Energizers still have utility and function even when you can't eat the ghosts anymore. Eating one relieves Pac-Man of his pursuers for a breathable moment. The ghosts move faster than we do, though if we employ Pac-Man's most shimmeringly transient verb and think faster than they do, we'll survive. In this way, Pac-Man generally gives us 2 games, the family-friendly familiarity of its first 20 levels, and the cosmic unknown of the expert's playground beyond. Thus, Pac-Man represents an invitation to would-be experts. When you recognize that the difficulty peaks from level 21 and that the game's crashing on level 256 constitutes a definitive ending, however surreal, you realize that it is possible to play a perfect game of Pac-Man. Like a Rubik's Cube, Pac-Man is a solvable game. One with many hundreds, thousands, millions? I'll count those during the editing phase. One with many hundreds of quote-unquote solutions, though solvable nonetheless. The aspiring perfect player knows one goal: earn 3,333,360 points the only way you can, by eating every dot, eating every edible ghost, eating every fruit, and clearing every stage. Pac-Man here becomes speed chess for cyberbrains. Pac-Man from here on begs its best players to memorize dozens of patterns and plays with a football coach's attention to detail, a quarterback's intuition, and a robot's knack for repetition. I've spent much time picking apart Pac-Man's game design and optimal play patterns with friends over the last 20 or so years, though until this month, I never exactly understood what was happening in a player's mind during a perfect game of Pac-Man. To try to explain the beauty of what I now see in it, we'll have to examine the scatter phase in a little more detail. I like to think of the scatter phase of a Pac-Man level as the information gathering phase. During this phase, the ghosts simply roam in little patrol orbits, while Pac-Man, under the player's control, executes the first movements toward clearing a level. Where Pac-Man goes as a level begins is entirely up to the player. Yet, when the ghosts' scatter patrol circuits finish, they immediately enter their paradigms relative to Pac-Man's exact position as of that instant. A skilled player knows then that on any given level, a best possible play exists. For every given ghost planning phase versus any moment's player position, an ideal movement pattern applies. When you watch a perfect game playthrough on YouTube, you can palpate the intensity ramp up after level 21, at which point the player can't even eat the ghosts anymore, eliminating one whole tentpole of the game's design. The perfect player maximizes the time spent inside each scatter phase. They know exactly when it's going to begin, and they know exactly where to be when it ends. Every Pac-Man player action kicks off a slippery slope avalanche of ghost paradigm adjustment. The player never feels too helpless because the level design stays the same. In fact, I spent so many hours watching Pac-Man perfect games on YouTube that the shape of the Pac-Man maze is burned into my brain, the way it got burned into some arcade cabinet monitors back in the day. I bet you, if you handed me a sheet of graph paper and asked me to draw the Pac-Man maze from memory, I could do it right now, right here on camera, to the dot. However, I don't think Ryan Taylor, sitting behind the camera right this instant, I don't think he even read the script after I sent it to him and put it into the teleprompter, so he probably doesn't even have a sheet of graph paper and a 0.7mm Uniball Jetstream black ink pen, a green highlighter, a yellow highlighter, a blue highlighter, a pink highlighter, an orange highlighter. I don't think he has any of those things on hand. If he did, I would do it. I would draw that maze on command. Wait, you have them?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I was gonna cheat. I was gonna memorize it immediately before, and then I just didn't bother. We don't have a desk. The expert player has mastered every zone of this playing field. The expert player has mastered use of the curious wrap tunnel that warps Pac-Man around to the opposite side of the maze. The area above the hockey box remains dot-free and tricky to navigate. Pac-Man always turns faster than the ghosts. The ghosts always move less than half their speed in the tunnel. In this way, the level becomes a vacation home of sorts for the best of players. Now we see the full beauty of Pac-Man's eschewing of the alluring flash of the multi-screen scrolling effect of its big brother, Rally X. Like so many other honest video games like Killer Queen or Video Ball, Pac-Man stays on one screen because it wants us to know it is not hiding anything from us. It is not cheating us. At least not visually. A skilled player constantly takes in all available information. Number of dots remaining, quantity and position of remaining energizers, positions of ghosts, and This player can queue up decisions many moves in advance. On my 3-year-old iPhone 10 in the dark at night, sleepless, flat on my back, atop a hard floor, felt loudly through the thin plastic of a deflated air mattress with a hole in it. I watched a lot of super plays and perfect games and world records of Pac-Man in the research process of this review. In fact, in this review, I think I spent slightly more time watching videos of Pac-Man than I spent playing Pac-Man. I watched perfect games by players who have memorized every possible pattern with a Go player's attention to the histories of players who came before them. I watched perfect plays by Billy Mitchell, history's first perfect player-through of Pac-Man, who swore he played on intuition alone, his familiarity with his and the ghost's past relationships fueling his constant virtuoso skill. I skeeved Wi-Fi at the Starbucks across the street, which, again, literally wasn't even open, to 4K download multiple perfect game runs for scrutiny within the scientific environment of Adobe Premiere. I wanted to look as deeply as I could at those first 20 levels. One fascinating element of these first 20 levels of a perfect game of Pac-Man is that the perfect player spends a lot of time standing perfectly still, simply reckoning the phantoms. Pac-Man stops when he reaches a corner, waiting for the player to input a direction. Perfect players exploit this. Now, how much time does the player spend simply waiting around? I was going to calculate it before coming here, before getting on an airplane and coming here to South Bend, Indiana. And then I decided not to, because I want to stream it. You see, the audience at twitch.tv/actionbutton derives entertainment from peculiar activities. Couldn't very well stream this before filming this video because we have not yet announced the name of the game that will be reviewed in this review at the time of this recording. So I'm going to need to refer to our remote correspondent, my future self, for this next segment.
Okay, so it looks like we've got 29 minutes, 35 seconds, and 14 frames. However, I want to point out that I actually was looking at YouTube and I looked at a lot of these perfect games. There's a couple of perfect games that I found. One of them is a little bit more elegant than the other. This one that's I would actually say this one is a lot more elegant. This particular player really went wild. Didn't pause nearly as much as the other player did. So I chose the player who paused a little bit more frequently. This one who paused kind of less. I mean, they still paused. This is a player from Korea. There's still an occasional pause. I decided not to count any pauses that were shorter than 7 seconds. And usually this pause up here lasts about 14 seconds. So I did a little cross-analysis. This player does this little thing where they dip down. I think they're gonna do it. Or they're gonna dip down and then go back up. It looks like, if this player is any indication, it looks like they don't actually have to do that. This is a common spot to wait for the ghosts to line up. Looks like you don't actually have to do that little dip that this other player is doing. So I was counting the exact frames of the dip as not counting toward the rest, though this player was being overly cautious. That is, adds an extra 1.34 seconds to that, though we're not going to count that one. What I did notice over the course of scrutinizing this other playthrough is that late in this playthrough, in levels 230 something, and this player, I believe, legit did take like a bathroom break or like an actual nap, because this is a really long pause. This is a pause of literally 6 minutes. 6 minutes pass here, during which this player does not move at all and just stands in this little lower corner down here. So it looks like there is a nap zone, and I've tried to scrutinize this, and I figured it out. Notice you've got, okay, keep your eye on the blue ghost, on, Inky is his name. He's going in the tunnel, right? He goes in the tunnel. Slows down, comes out of the tunnel. So where is Inky upon emerging from the tunnel? We got him right at the edge of the tunnel. Now we've got Blinky just coming down on the right side of this T-bar here, right? He's coming right down on the side of that T-bar, and then right around this part is where so we've got him here. He's coming out of the tunnel again, and Blinky is right underneath Pac-Man, right? Interesting. So we'll notice that those timings are kind of clockworking away from each other. So now we've got Blinky going in here again, coming out here. We've got, so Blinky right now is like right on the bottom of that T-bar. So watch this. Let Inky do another round, go back into the tunnel. Inky's coming out of the tunnel again. And it looks like we've got Blinky standing like on the little precipice of the T-bar there. Scrutinized this enough without actually being able to play on this level. Blinky standing right there on what looks to be like the ledge of that T-bar. That's where this player chooses to exit this particular rest. I went through and I thought, can I find that exact positionality again elsewhere here? Keep your eye on Blinky in the tunnel. Keep your eye on Blinky to be... We're going backwards, by the way. Keep your eye on Blinky in the tunnel. Yeah, there it is again. So that's that same positionality. It occurs once every, I mean, dare we calculate it? Let's do it. This position occurs once every 2 minutes, 46 seconds, and 0 frames. Okay, so exactly 2 minutes and 46 seconds. You get this position. It's not exact. I could Google this. It's more fun to not Google it in this case. This indicates that what we're looking at it's just an endless nap zone located in the deep end game. So we really needn't scrutinize it too much further. It's, you can just kind of take endless naps in Pac-Man if you want. So later in this review, when I compare Pac-Man to pizza and say it's like everybody can get a slice and eat it and it has a perfect handhold that's accessible to everyone, keep in mind that also, like pizza, there can be a guy who orders like a meat lovers and then laughs at you for ordering a cheese pizza and then eats like 6 slices of your cheese pizza. That's what this is right here. You can literally just take big naps with Pac-Man. I was gonna stream this and then I had too much of a headache. I didn't feel like streaming it. And it required a lot of concentration. I wouldn't have been very conversational with the stream. We'll stream some more stuff at some point soon. And if we include those naps from this player, multiple perfect players have multiple ways of playing the game through to a perfect score, so a lot of them take different rests of different durations. And it looks like if we add that, we end up with this player basically spent 42 minutes, 16 seconds, and 9 frames not playing the game.
Wow, that's a lot! The player does all this waiting around so as to better line up the ghosts for immediate consumption after eating an Energizer. The skill here lies in knowing when to stand where. For seemingly indefinite periods of time during a perfect game of Pac-Man, the player stands so still it seems like they're invincible. Yet, knowing what I know about the just nuanced enough behavior of Pac-Man's ghosts, I know that no player can stand perfectly still forever in every location. Eventually, the ghosts will find and kill Pac-Man in most places on the map. Pac-Man's game designer didn't impose an abstract time limit. However, the ghosts represent a concrete time limit. The perfect Pac-Man player need only spend the first 20 levels of the game killing time like this. The next 235 levels go much faster because the player needn't concern themselves with eating ghosts, because Pac-Man's movement speed has increased, and because the player can confidently and safely perform the exact same movement paths every time. However, that's still 235 more levels. A perfect game of Pac-Man tends to run an average length of 5 hours and 27 minutes. At 1980 prices of $1/4 per play, that's literally 22 hours of action per dollar. Find yourself a 24-hour arcade and that's like paying $32.72 rent per month. The arcade is near a McDonald's. You can get a single cheeseburger during the opening wait time from the first level of each play.
Now that I've done my analysis, I'd like to say that I'd actually recommend going for the cheeseburger during one of those guaranteed at least 6-minute long nap segments that you can get. That's when I'd recommend it. So just correcting myself a little bit here.
That's $1 per cheeseburger, which contains 313 calories. That's 1,252 calories per day, which is well under the Food and Drug Administration's recommended daily allowance of 2,000 calories, though that 2,000 calorie daily allowance is a ballpark recommendation, assuming a lifestyle involving at least 20 minutes of physical activity per day. Nonetheless, you should bring a bar stool with a high back for lumbar support, firmly qualifying you for sedentary status and thus decreasing your overall calorie need by 33%. At $1 per cheeseburger, $4 per day, that brings our rent up to $152.72 per month. After the manner of Leonardo da Vinci, train yourself to micro-sleep, trucker style, in those idle waiting seconds within levels 2 through 20 of each game, and you'll accomplish a total of...
Okay, we said we had, what, 29 minutes, 35 seconds, and 14 frames of guaranteed rest per game. So if we convert that to seconds, 14 frames is 0.2333 repeating seconds, and 29 times 60 is 1,740, plus 35 is 1,775, plus 2.233 repeating is 1,775.233333333. 5 hours and 27 minutes is 5.45 hours, and 24 divided by 5.45 is 4.4036697247770642, and that times 1775.23333 is 7,817.4512844036668 seconds per day, which divided by 60 gives us 130.29235474000611
minutes of sleep per day. Perfectly adequate for the low-activity Pac-Man feverish lifestyle. I bet if you got good enough, you could actually learn to play levels 21 through 255 in your sleep, simply relying on motor reflexes. However, at this point, that's getting ridiculous.
Actually, if we take the 5-minute, 44-second, 6-frame naps perpetrated by one of the perfect players at face value, we just say that that's possible exactly once in every level between 21 and 255. That's 234 levels. 5 minutes and 44 seconds and 6 frames is 344.1 seconds, and that times 234 equals 80,519.4 seconds, which divided by 60 equals 1,314.99 minutes, which equals 22.3665 hours. And if we add the 29 minutes of the first 20 levels, the guaranteed 29 minutes, to that, we've pretty much proven that Pac-Man isn't just a video game, it's pretty much a hotel.
Of course, not everyone plays Pac-Man perfectly. In fact, only the tiniest percentage of players can even glimpse the raw shape of a perfect Pac-Man game. For noobs, Pac-Man is the perfect arcade game. A huge part of the game's perfection rests on the way it asks players to short-term retain information during the sparkling instant when it breaks its else-time pact of transparency. When Mom rented the NES version of Pac-Man from Pop and Go Video in Wichita, Kansas, instead of Trojan that one Friday afternoon in 1988, my big brother's vociferous disappointment subsided following the ritual of Friday pizza dinner. He joined me on the basement floor. We had a basement in Kansas. In front of the 19-inch CRT television. Quietly, and then loudly, he spectated my growing skill in Pac-Man. I distinctly recall his spectation was as crucial as my playing. Without touching a controller, he played that game as much as I did. I was 9 and my brother was 11. I had only recently begun to beat him in chess, and it would be months before I beat my teacher, Mrs. Dunn, in backgammon. After a few hours of serious 4-ghost Pac-Man, I could tell what one ghost did differently from another, though once I ate a power pill and all the ghosts turned the same color, I lost track of who was whom and ate them usually in an order that left me proximal to the wrong ghost when the medicine wore off. I needed my brother's yelling directions. Sometimes he was wrong, sometimes he wasn't. And usually when he wasn't wrong, he'd prefix any orders with the phrase, "No, seriously." Pac-Man taught me to trust a no seriously. Pac-Man gave me my first ever memory of deciding to triumphantly trust someone who had been wrong mere moments before. Together, my brother and I played Pac-Man in this manner for a weekend. Over the course of those 48 hours, we got pretty good at Pac-Man together, though it occurs to me today that we never got so good as to reach the point where Pac-Man can't eat the ghosts anymore. 5 years earlier on the Atari 2600, my brother had told me he'd played Pac-Man in an arcade once with Dad when I was a baby, and I couldn't believe it. I'd only started cataloging memories mere months before, thinking back on the black wall before I heard my mom speak the words Pepperidge Farm in that high-ceilinged supermarket, and wordlessly thinking I've heard those words before gave me instant shivers. So it is that my memories of Pac-Man intertwine with the discomfort of remembering the moment I realized the world existed before and without me. And 4 weeks ago, for the first time in my life, I reached the 23rd level of Pac-Man on a Nintendo Switch, on the original arcade version, in the backseat of a Honda SUV driving down a Connecticut highway. I can now say with confidence that I can beat the 21st stage of Pac-Man. If you can beat the 21st stage, you can theoretically beat the other 234 of them. And I can beat the first 22. 32 years ago, I'd struggled just to get to stage 18, never imagining that the game removes the ghost-eating mechanic shortly beyond as far as I could get. Back then, I'd imagined a perfect game as eating ghosts, literally forever. Today, I have known for several years that you can't eat ghosts forever. That eventually you can't eat the ghosts anymore, and eventually the game crashes. Today, I know that perfection involves 20 levels of strategy and fruit eating, followed by 235 levels of desperate, dead-eyed, digit twitch and repetition, and collection of joyless, identical keys. Perfection is stupider than a child imagines it. Perfection is brutal. Perfection isn't impossible. However, perfection is bad, actually. Pac-Man is not a perfect video game. However, it is the perfect video game. Take, for instance, the game Jawbreaker. In 1981, somebody cloned Pac-Man for Atari 8-bit home computers. He made the ghosts smiley faces. He made Pac-Man a pair of edgy, snaggly teeth. The box art showed a grotesque pair of disembodied, dismouthed human chattering teeth. Each level ends with a hideous, nightmarish toothbrushing animation. This guy took Pac-Man and branded it louder. Despite its relative aesthetical repugnance, Jawbreaker is an almost perfect game design mechanical clone of Pac-Man. Atari, out of protective instinct for their home distribution rights for Pac-Man, litigated against Jawbreaker. The court found in Atari's favor, establishing, quietly and all the way back in 1981, that game design sort of is something you can patent. That Pac-Man's game design is sort of on the same level as a proprietary chemical formula. At Atari's request, the makers of Jawbreaker would need to differentiate the Atari 2600 version of Jawbreaker significantly from Pac-Man. When the law required them to differentiate their game design, they made trash. Imagine if an actual chimpanzee designed and developed a Mario Party minigame. Required by law to make something spiritually similar to Pac-Man instead of simply cloning Pac-Man, the developers grabbed a bunch of knobs and twisted. Instead of dynamic ghost intelligences, Jawbreaker for Atari 2600 features enemies which move in a straight line. Instead of fixed locations for energizers, Jawbreaker for 2600 spawns energizers occasionally the way Pac-Man spawns fruit. Instead of fixed maze walls, Jawbreaker for Atari 2600 gives us simple horizontal walls with moving traversal holes. Jawbreaker for Atari 2600 is trash. It's about as good a game as the game my dog Bibby Babbis designed with the little plush toy otter he carries everywhere. The rules of that game, in case you were wondering, are he brings me the otter, drops it at my feet, whines until I pick it up, barks at me when I hold it, runs to get it when I throw it, then fetches it, takes it into my bed, drops it by my pillow, and decides to do something else. He occasionally brings it back. He'll bring it back until he gets bored, and then he just takes it into our bed or under the bed. It's better than some Atari 2600 games, a lot of them. Pac-Man inspired players to play it perfectly, and Pac-Man inspired game designers to design it again. The point I'm trying to make with Jawbreaker is you could clone Pac-Man, though you couldn't just make a game like it. If you wanted to make a game inspired by Pac-Man, you had to pretty much make anything else. You couldn't just take Pac-Man and mess with it a little bit. Pac-Man's individual elements, ghosts, the maze, Pac-Man, dots, power pellets, fruit, those elements work so perfectly together in concert that if you take these same elements and then meaningfully, in the eyes of a court of law, differentiate your new design, you cannot make a good game. This is why Pac-Man never had a sequel, except for Pac-Man 2, which we'll get into in a couple of minutes. For the moment, let's talk about Pac-Man's immediate legacy. In the field of video game criticism, we simply cannot stop talking about how far any given new game has come from Pac-Man. Though, to lend better context to this, let's look at the brief period of years during which Pac-Man struggled to maneuver any distance at all from itself. At the time of its release in 1980, Pac-Man was more than a game, it was a movement. The nuanced depth of Pac-Man's design must have instantly shocked and awed game designers and aspiring game designers in 1980 because so many of them were inspired to tune and tweak Pac-Man's formula, perhaps revitalizing the form of video games forevermore, reigniting the spark that happened when a ball first struck a pong paddle. Game developers of the day must have reckoned Pac-Man the way chess mavens think about AI, that it exists to test their skill. Pac-Man isn't Tetris, it's not a perfect game. Game designers of the day all knew in their hearts Pac-Man was not a perfect game. They revered Pac-Man because it was too interesting to be perfect. Pac-Man had taken so many big risks in innovating in the areas it did that it left a grand canyon of flaws. This encouraged many game designers to discuss how to make it better. Some intrepid designers took these discussions so far as to hack their way into Pac-Man and modify it from the inside in tune with their own persuasions. The concept of the mod kit was popular in the day. Game design was yet an undisciplined science. Yet, perhaps the most famous ancient video game mod kit began life as a Pac-Man variant called Crazy Otto. This story is old and not as interesting as it is often told, though here it is. The hackers who made Crazy Otto took it to Pac-Man's distributor, Midway, and ended up with a deal. They eventually rebranded it as Ms. Pac-Man. A large number of Pac-Man players, according to arcade owners of the day, were women, so they made a new version of Pac-Man with a visibly female fashion accessorized protagonist. The going opinion since probably the day after its release is that Ms. Pac-Man is, quote, better than Pac-Man, unquote. I too bought this opinion wholesale for many years. Ms. Pac-Man has better graphics. The maze walls are solid colors instead of outlines. Ms. Pac-Man has 4 different maze patterns, some with 2 sets of wraparound tunnels. The mazes are all different colors. With regard to its invisible background mechanical numbers, Ms. Pac-Man is faster, tighter, and mathier than the original Pac-Man. Most importantly, Ms. Pac-Man's ghost behavior incorporates semi-random movement. This effectively thwarts would-be perfect players from rote memorizing single strategies for any given level. Ms. Pac-Man's designers here definitively stated their belief that making the game impossible to solve made it better. They cleanly stated that they saw Pac-Man's solvability as a flaw worthy of scrubbing away. I know the word is solubility. Solvability sounds good. Sometimes I say words that sound better. Always pick the word that sounds better. Writing tip. Ms. Pac-Man players must constantly readjust their strategies. Ms. Pac-Man players must constantly take in and interpret ghost movements and tendencies at all times, bathing in a brain chemical jacuzzi approximating amateur StarCraft levels. For decades after its release, people presented this opinion like they'd come up with it first, that Ms. Pac-Man is, quote, better than the original Pac-Man, unquote. They presented this opinion the way people describe eggs and bacon as good hangover food. It's something none of the people saying it seem to know that everyone else that they're talking to already knows it. Is it really better, though? It's faster, tighter, mathier, more organic, though. Is it better? If Toru Iwatani and his co-workers at Namco had made Ms. Pac-Man, if it had been an official sequel and not the unsanctioned work of uninvited hackers, maybe we could say it was better. Though, as it is, if it's any better, it's better because the original existed. Pac-Man didn't just provide some mechanical blueprint for Ms. Pac-Man, it provided a soul. It even provided the very texture of the Pac-Man fabric. The original Pac-Man pauses from 1 frame every time Pac-Man eats a dot, 3 frames every time you eat an Energizer. All Ms. Pac-Man did was make this faster and graphically louder. To call it better than Pac-Man is an insult to Pac-Man. Faster than Pac-Man, sure. More fun than Pac-Man, why the heck not? Better? Absolutely not. I'll admit I called Ms. Pac-Man better than Pac-Man for many years. I purchased the NES port of Ms. Pac-Man, published by Tengen in the United States, for $8 at a flea market in Indianapolis when I was 14. I played the heck out of that game. I loved it. We didn't have Wikipedia or even the internet back then, so I didn't know some American hackers had made it. Heck, I didn't even know Toru Iwatani's name back then. All I knew was that this game was like Pac-Man, which I'd last played 5 years ago. Only it was better. And she had a bow in her head. Right up until I played Pac-Man Championship Edition for Xbox 360 in 2005, I told people I liked Ms. Pac-Man better than Pac-Man. Pac-Man Championship Edition showed me a true textural retuning of Pac-Man. Pac-Man Championship Edition showed me the actual truth of the original Pac-Man. I knew that Pac-Man Championship Edition had been made by Namco in commemoration of Pac-Man's 25th anniversary. I knew that Microsoft had bankrolled the game and had relied on it to heavily hype their worldwide Xbox Live score leaderboards. I knew that Toru Iwatani had himself designed this exact reimagining of Pac-Man, and by 2005, at age 26, I knew that Toru Iwatani had not worked on Ms. Pac-Man. My interest in Pac-Man reawakened. I tracked down a Ms. Pac-Man arcade cabinet in Akihabara and played a couple of rounds. I decided that Pac-Man Championship Edition was better than Ms. Pac-Man. It turns out the game's original designer's idea of an upgraded, retuned Pac-Man spiritually obliterated the opinions of some interloping hackers. This illustrates cleanly the disastrously wide canyon between author and fan. Today, I think on the design differences between Ms. Pac-Man and Pac-Man Championship Edition, and I realized that Toru Iwatani, after making Pac-Man, had no interest in making a Pac-Man 2. Maybe even less than no interest. Namco permitted hackers to make official Pac-Man pseudo-sequels like Ms. Pac-Man or Pac-Man Plus, which has more mazes and is harder. Namco let Midway make Junior Pac-Man about Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man's child who wore a propeller beanie while eating dots, pills, and ghosts like his mom and dad had. Namco cut Midway off after that. They said no more sequels. I look at Junior Pac-Man after writing what I've written so far in this review, and I think I see why. See, Junior Pac-Man traverses a maze that scrolls a little bit left and right as the player moves. Junior Pac-Man is a Pac-Man game that scrolls. Why would you want a Pac-Man game to scroll? The static nature of Pac-Man's Labyrinth accounts for a massive percentage of the game's excellence. These modifications, these hackings and interlopings, merely inventiveness-lessly tweaked a winning formula. They never interrogated the heart of why that formula was so incredibly interesting. Meanwhile, as hackers poked at Pac-Man, Toru Iwatani moved on to elsewhere. Toru Iwatani, legendary game designer, designed Pac-Man and then moved happily on to other interests, while a junkyard dog pack's worth of sanctioned hackers ripped his game to money-making shreds. When Toru Iwatani returned to Pac-Man in 1982, it was to make Super Pac-Man. In Super Pac-Man, Pac-Man moves through a maze, though every other incidental verb of the original game has been defamiliarized into unrecognizability. Look at this wildness. Now, look at the original. Super Pac-Man shows us a Pac-Man in a world where the streets are paved with fruit, where Pac-Man quests for keys. Given an opportunity to show the money-making hackers his own world-busting idea of a retuned Pac-Man, Iwatani chose instead to put his character elsewhere, doing else what. Toru Iwatani didn't dare call Super Pac-Man Pac-Man 2. However, the inclusion of the word super before Pac-Man inspired Shigeru Miyamoto to title his Mario Brothers follow-up Super Mario Brothers. Probably resulted in Nintendo calling their Famicom follow-up the Super Famicom. Probably resulted in DC Comics deciding to call their Man follow-up Super Man. Toru Iwatani, in an evident display of egolessness, had even let hackers go so far as to tell his game's story for him. Toru Iwatani let other game designers tell him that his character had a wife with a bow in her head and a son with a propeller beanie. Then, Toru Iwatani went and, remarkably, let that legalized fan fiction become canon. Pac-Land, a side-scrolling platform game starring Pac-Man in a world reminiscent of that portrayed in the Pac-Man Saturday morning cartoon. Pac-Land's dynamic, exciting, scrolling camera inspired Shigeru Miyamoto to make Super Mario Brothers. Yet, this too, they did not see fit to title Pac-Man 2. When eventually the Nam Corporation did publish a game with a logo forming the shape of the letters Pac-Man 2, it was a weird point-and-click adventure starring Pac-Man and his wife Ms. Pac-Man and his son Pac-Man Jr. The player doesn't directly control Pac-Man. The player, quote-unquote, clicks by firing a slingshot at any on-screen item, inspiring Pac-Man to investigate. In this way, Pac-Man 2, The New Adventures, tilted the idea of a point-and-click adventure ever so slightly toward the yet non-existent genre of virtual pet. Pac-Man 2, The New Adventures, released in 1994. Tamagotchi, released in 1996. In other words, the innovative intuition of Pac-Man's makers once again had outpaced that of their contemporaries as profoundly as it had 14 years earlier. Here, Pac-Man 2 presented us a game that was as much about watching its protagonist react, more than it was about our directly playing, sort of like a perfect game of Pac-Man. Only Pac-Man 2 is a joke. For one thing, in Japan, the country of its origin, Pac-Man 2 is actually called Haro Pac-Man. Hello, Pac-Man. I guess that makes it also sort of a precursor to Hey You Pikachu. Though why not call Pac-Man 2 Pac-Man 2, for the moment anyway? As of 1994, we'd have all thought that A Pac-Man 2 would certainly feature Pac-Man running a maze, avoiding ghosts, and eating dots, though seeing as the first Pac-Man did in fact come out of nowhere, why not let its sequel come out of an equal nowhere? What else could a Pac-Man 2 even be if not something out of nowhere? So, when Toru Iwatani came back to make another Pac-Man game about Pac-Man eating dots, running a maze, and avoiding ghosts, he did so
for a huge bucket of Microsoft's money.
He did so in support of a burgeoning technology, online leaderboards, and a worldwide competition. He did so with absolute artistic triumph, and he did it as his farewell to the game designer's profession. With Pac-Man Championship Edition, Toru Iwatani definitively communicated 2.5 decades of what I can only imagine was daily, silent philosophizing about the game he had designed all the way back in 1980. With one thunderous swoop, Toru Iwatani rendered moot any hackers' attempts to make Pac-Man quote-unquote better. Then he retired as a game designer to become a full-time lecturer on the subject of game design at Tokyo Polytechnic University. With Pac-Man Championship Edition, Toru Iwatani simultaneously dropped the mic, hung up the phone, and closed the door. If ever a game had deserved the name Pac-Man 2, this was it. Yet, even then, Toru Iwatani did not call Pac-Man Championship Edition Pac-Man 2. If I could just take a second here, I want to say that after years of calling Pac-Man Championship Edition one of the best games of all time, as of the last 5 years or so, I've started to consider Pac-Man Championship Edition's time limit kind of trashy. I understand it was for the purpose of having clean leaderboards, though really, time limits are the worst restrictor possible in video games. It should have just been endless and one life, with a couple other tweaks. Namco, my Twitter DMs are open if you'd like to hear the rest. Also, while I'm here, I'd just like to say that the M2 developed NES/Famicom version of Pac-Man Championship Edition included in M2's Namco Museum Archives Volume 1 absolutely blows my mind. Also, this is as good a place as any to mention that M2's Sega Mega Drive port of Darius and M2's original Sega Mega Drive version of Tetris on the Sega Genesis Mini are amazing and excellent. M2 completely owns. Years after Pac-Man Championship Edition, we had Pac-Man Championship Edition DX, which misunderstood everything about Pac-Man. And then Pac-Man Championship Edition 2, which thought that Pac-Man Championship Edition DX was the same thing as Pac-Man Championship Edition. In these modern times, it's easy to slip into a hateful sort of reverie. It's easy sometimes to think that modern things are bad, because usually they are. Though even in the midst of Pac-Man Championship Edition DX and Pac-Man Championship Edition 2's existence, someone at Namco managed to design Pac-Man Battle Royale. Pac-Man Battle Royale is a 4-player competitive Pac-Man in which Pac-Men can eat energizers and subsequently other Pac-Men while competing to eat more dots in a maze. In 2011, 6 years before Battle Royale became a billion-dollar word, Pac-Man Battle Royale introduced a genuinely and ingeniously fresh take on the Pac-Man formula. Pac-Man Battle Royale, when played with 4 seasoned players, proves that Pac-Man had in fact laid the foundation for a critically interesting electronic sport as far back as 1980. For decades, Pac-Man had been begging any would-be innovators in a wax-on, wax-off fashion to reckon with its perfect simplicity every time we uttered a phrase so tired as games have come a long way since Pac-Man. If ever a game deserved to be called Pac-Man 2, it was Pac-Man Battle Royale. Yet, even Pac-Man Battle Royale dared not call itself Pac-Man 2. Even Namco's various attempts at casting Pac-Man into the burgeoning 3D mascot platformer genre never wore the name Pac-Man 2, helpful as that might have been for sales. Maybe if they'd called the simple 3D platformer Pac-Man World for the PlayStation Pac-Man 2, people would have finally cared about Pac-Man's social life. I'd like to propose that Pac-Man 2 can't exist except as a logographical practical joke committed by an American game publisher. Pac-Man 2 isn't Pac-Man 2, much like Tetris 2 is not Tetris 2. Pac-Man 2 can't exist because Pac-Man isn't a story which can have a sequel. Pac-Man is a work of art. I'd argue that, if anything, every video game after Pac-Man is Pac-Man 2. Super Mario Bros. Is more Pac-Man 2 than Ms. Pac-Man is Pac-Man 2. The thought experiment contained within the phrase Pac-Man 2 will thus remain a splinter in every game designer's mind, dooming us to forever assess every new video game landmark in terms of its distance from Pac-Man. That is, until much like Microsoft Windows 10 came out after Windows 8 and the iPhone 10 came out after the iPhone 8, somebody has the guts to just make Pac-Man 3.
Maybe they already did.
Though to be perfectly honest, I think if we loosen our definition a bit, someone actually did make Pac-Man 2. It was Toru Iwatani himself. He made it in 1983, only he didn't call it Pac-Man 2 because Toru Iwatani was 37 years ahead of me in realizing that you can't just call Pac-Man 2 Pac-Man 2. When I founded Action Button Reviews on this very channel, I earnestly intended for each video to contain a field segment wherein I travel to meet and talk to the game's creator and maybe eat a meal with them. This field production segment would, for example, likely appear at this exact point of this review. The way I see it, if it weren't for an ongoing global health emergency taking place during the filming of this video, I would ask you all to kindly permit me to take 6 months off of releasing reviews so that I could go to Japan and realize 24 such interviews to enrich future videos as necessary. However, a global health emergency has conspired to render this plan inert. My own first-hand experience nearly suffocating beneath the virus has left me willing to travel no further than to South Bend, Indiana for the purposes of filming the video presentation you are watching today. South Bend, Indiana, in addition to housing the recording studio our producer Ryan Taylor is able to readily and graciously access, is only an hour's flight from my home in New York, New York. Well, actually, I fly direct into Indianapolis, borrow my mom's 2018 Kia Soul, and enjoy a nice 2-hour drive up here. I gotta say, when you live in New York City long enough, 2 hours behind the wheel of a car feels like heaven, even a Kia Soul. And that car sucks. It's like, what if a PT Cruiser bought an iPod? That's what it feels like. Every brand newish Love's gas station on State Road 31 feels like an oasis. My own experience with a pneumonia resultant of 2020's virus of the year has left many pulmonary after effects that make it difficult for me to endure wearing a dual layer of little paper masks for more than 4 airporting hours at a time. If it weren't for this virus, I'd have gone to see Video Games' friend, Mike Micah, in Emeryville, California. I'm sure he'd have let me film luxurious footage of his boisterous collection of Pac-Man arcade machines and memorabilia. Were the virus entirely eradicated by global pharmaceutical cooperation, I'd also have traveled to Tokyo and scored a sit-down with Toru Iwatani. Let me tell you, one way or another, I would have got the guy. If I may boast for a second, I might have been able to wrangle an on-camera interview with Toru Iwatani because I know for a fact that Toru Iwatani has played 2 games that I designed, and that he liked both of them. You see, Toru Iwatani was a professor of game design for a while at Tokyo Polytechnic University. I came across a couple of students of his program at that school while showing my game Video Ball in Tokyo back in 2013. 4 of them ended up getting quite good at Video Ball before one of them confessed in excellent English that he followed me on Twitter. He told me that he'd shown Toru Iwatani Action Button's now mysteriously banished for some reason iOS game Ziggurat, which got a 9 out of 10 from Edge magazine. And Toru Iwatani played it and complimented it. The creator of Pac-Man then paid the 2012 Japanese equivalent of $1 US to own my game Ziggurat on his own phone. And I forgot to write this, maybe because I'm too humble. During the Tokyo Game Show 2013, I was walking around the merch area, and a guy traveling with like 3, clearly they were lackeys, and he was the big shot, pointed at me. He just pointed at me like the rudest. That's a rude greeting. He pointed at me and said, "Ziggurat," in English. And I went up to him and I'm like, "Yeah, what's up?" And he's like, "I saw your commercial for Ziggurat on YouTube. I saw your weird little commercial. I played your game, and then I was looking to see if people were talking about it on YouTube." And he was the CEO of M2, a company I have complimented many times in this video. M2 completely owns. And he told me that Toru Iwatani told him about the game. That's what he told me. And that was the most flattered I had ever been in my entire life. Like the most, honestly, like a kick in the nuts, except like in a good way. It was just like, what? Toru Iwatani told a guy to buy my game, and the guy who bought it is a really cool guy. I'm just like, that's ridiculous. That was maybe the most flattered I'd ever been in my life. And I didn't write it because I just, I don't think about it a lot, because I guess I have some sort of serious problem thinking back on fond memories. So I just don't know how to do that. Don't let myself do that enough. Well, there's that. That's true. So one of these kids who were playing Video Ball with me, having heard the words Ziggurat and Iwatani in the same English sentence, asked his friend in Japanese, "Oh, are you talking about that game Professor Iwatani likes, Ziggurat?" So knowing that I could indirectly communicate with Toru Iwatani through these kids, I decided to maintain a shallow friendship with them. One of them might be watching this video right now. If so, hello. I still follow you on Twitter. I sent him a Video Ball on PC. And he told me that Iwatani, quote unquote, got really good at it. I asked this kid via email, did Professor Iwatani say anything about the Libble Rabble reference? To which the kid replied, "What's Libble Rabble?" Imagine studying game design under Toru Iwatani and not knowing what Libble Rabble is. I wonder if Bennett Foddy knows what Libble Rabble is. He probably does. Libble Rabble's pretty much Pac-Man cricket. So there's no way Bennett Foddy doesn't know what Libble Rabble is. I mean, I know what Libble Rabble is. I love Libble Rabble. Libble Rabble first came out in 1983, though I first played it at a Namco-owned arcade in Saitama in December of 2001. I instantly loved it. However, the more 100-yen coins I dropped into it, the harder I found it to explain what in fact the game was all about. I will now attempt to explain what Libble Rabble is about. Libble Rabble, in addition to inspiring the name of Taito's game Bubble Bobble and the name of my dog, Bibby Babbis, is an interactive electronic top-down action strategy puzzle sport in which the player moves 2 chevron-shaped arrows simultaneously with 2 joysticks. One of the arrows is red and pointing to the left. One of the arrows is blue and pointing to the right. Connecting the 2 chevron-shaped arrows is a thin blue line. Situated around the grass-green playing field are numerous small brown equilateral diamond-shaped pegs. These pegs will anchor the thin blue line between your arrows. So the thin blue line is a rope. The arrows can move apart from one another, stretching the rope. Bend the rope around the numerous pegs to create various shapes. Close a shape to ward it off, filling in that zone with a different color. Use your rope to enclose little mushrooms to harvest them. Avoid enemies with both arrows at the same time. Catch enemies within the closed loop of your rope to eliminate them. Close the loop by intersecting the characters. Close the loop against one of the arena walls. Scissor-shaped enemies can cut your rope. Situated around the 4 walls of the arena is a visual time meter. Harvest mushrooms and eliminate enemies to keep it full. Maneuver well, avoid enemies, control space, score points, keep the time meter satisfied, spell words, witness graphical freak shows, and eventually be declared some sort of a winner. The simplicity of Libble Rabble's immediate concept shocks me even today. You control 2 characters at once. You quote-unquote attack quote-unquote enemies by enclosing them within environment-informed rope shapes. In other words, you attack by careful movement. Like Pac-Man before it, Libble Rabble's only player-executed verb is move, though, like Pac-Man before it, much else happens while you move. Libble Rabble possesses heroic depth and virtuoso execution. Yet, to overshoulder spectate a master player in 1983 must have felt now like your dad feels when he walks in on you watching Overwatch League. Ladling a concept as refreshingly new yet too soonly nebulous as space control atop a genre of video games whose players had only just gotten used to having fun with moving through mazes broke the Broncos' back. There wasn't even jumping in these games, yet. And he's doing all this in 1983. I mean, even my mom knows the basic rules of Pac-Man. Meanwhile, I worked with grizzled old veteran video game developers in Japan who didn't know what Libble Rabble even was. In summary, Libble Rabble was too much design. 1 year after Libble Rabble, Namco released Pac-Land. 1 year after Pac-Land, Nintendo released Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka's Super Mario Bros. Super Mario Bros. Took Pac-Land's lead in the way Donkey Kong had taken Pac-Man's lead. Video games about movement could do so much. Adding physical nuance and jumping to video game character movement could mean millions more dollars. Thus, the top-down game waned and the side-scroller flourished. With Donkey Kong and Mario Bros., Shigeru Miyamoto had already made the Pac-Man 2 that Ms. Pac-Man's makers could absolutely not. Maybe Pac-Land's designers saw Mario Bros. And took the next step into a scrolling side-view game, and though Shigeru Miyamoto explicitly cited Pac-Land as a reference point, the way I see it with Super Mario Bros., Shigeru Miyamoto wasn't even thinking about Pac-Man 3. I wonder if Shigeru Miyamoto had ever played Libble Rabble. Again, like Pac-Man, Libble Rabble is a game simply about movement. Toru Iwatani saw great potential in the verb of player movement. How obsessively he fixated on that verb in his own mind is between him and God, though witness the way sparks fly when Pac-Man takes a corner early in Pac-Man Championship Edition. This is proof that Toru Iwatani has always been thinking about player movement on at least as deep a level as Miyamoto and Tezuka did in their Super Mario Bros. Games. Yet, whatever revelations Toru Iwatani had about the joy of player movement between 1980's Pac-Man and 1983's Libble Rabble remain locked in a vault of time. When Iwatani returned from a Pac-Man sabbatical to design another game with movement as its central verb, he had already leapfrogged the next several decades of video game design philosophy. Libble-rabble could only be born of an obsession. I'd love to ask Iwatani in person where it came from. I've heard him say it's his favorite game he ever designed. He's even gone so far as to somehow humbly say it's his favorite game he's ever played. For Libble-rabble to trust the player to both tolerate and enjoy controlling two characters at the same time, all the way back in 1983, defies the imagination. Every game designer I've ever talked to who loves Libble-rabble has been carrying 10 similar ideas in their pocket for their entire career. I've got one of my own. I call it War and Peace. It's about as faithful to Tolstoy's novel as Treasure's Nintendo 64 game Sin and Punishment is faithful to the Dostoevsky novel Crime and Punishment.
Get bonus!
Which is in Japanese, the Japanese translations are called Tsumi Tobatsu, Sin and Punishment. Tsumi can mean sin, it can kind of mean crime. So the game Sin and Punishment, masterpiece, by the way. The game Sin and Punishment is called, it could have released it in America and called it Crime and Punishment. And it would have been good. It's just they gave an official English translation of the title. In my game, War and Peace, the player moves two characters at once. War, the red character, can only kill the blue enemies. Peace, the blue character, can only kill the blue enemies. The red character can block red attacks. The blue character can block blue attacks. Use the analog sticks to move the characters, triggers to attack, and shoulder buttons to block. I came up with this idea hours after first playing Libble-rabble, and 1 year before I first played Ikaruga. I've heard countless pitches from many Japanese game designers. Some of them confess to having prototyped their ideas at least once, though no one admits to ever making their prototypes any good. My prototypes were terrible for this game. It's brain salad, man.
The gray circles are balls that bounce. The blue monster rotates left or right, then thrusts forward until it touches something. Then it bounces to a stop, rotates in a random direction again. Everything slides. The bouncing balls disrupt the path of the blue monster. If the player touches the monster, they die. The goal is to touch each wall back and forth as many times as possible. I played this game more than Skyrim. I played this game more than Fallout New Vegas. I played this game more than Zelda Breath of the Wild. That's just one of the problems with me.
It's brain salad.
Though modern games, often newcomer off-puttingly, require players to use two analog sticks at the same time, one to control the player's movement and the other to control the camera's perspective. And while some low-budget games ask players to use one joystick to move and the other to shoot, finished, good video games throughout the pantheon of history have ultra seldom asked players to use two joysticks to move two separate characters. Take, for example, the remote-controlled car weapon in the Ape Escape games, designed as an in-game sales pitch for the Sony DualShock dual analog stick controller that the game required. This remote-controlled car weapon amounts to a little tiny Libble-rabble reference. Also see Sandlot's Robot Alchemic Drive or Platinum Games' excellent 2019 game Astral Chain. It took until 2019 for someone to make a mainstream AAA 3D action-adventure video game with simultaneous dual character control as a central mechanic. And there's the titular Astral Chain, which connects the two characters. Using enemies as pegs, you enclose them to do wild damage. That's gotta be a Libble-rabble reference. Libble-rabble's concept was so gargantuan in its depth that even Iwatani, the brain behind Pac-Man, could not figure out how to finish it. He had to call in other designers to flesh it out. They added secret treasure chests, and I presume they called it a day after that. Because here's the truth, I love Libble-rabble. Though, on the other hand, I admit that it's a weird, little, broken, unfinished thing. movement of a player character is an incredibly tough nut to crack. It took Pulitzer Prize-worthy diligence of interaction design and actual visionaryism to make Mario feel as good as he does in the original Super Mario Bros. An idea isn't a game. A game is a game. It's hard enough to make a game about the joy of the movement of one character. To try to make a fun game about the movement of two characters simultaneously, that's a big bite of something nobody can chew. Witness Keita Takahashi's much-hyped Katamari Damacy follow-up, Nobi Nobi Boy, in which the player controls two ends of a big weird snake child with two different analog sticks. The goal of Nobi Nobi Boy is to stretch this weird guy by wrapping him around objects and pulling, palpating the friction of Nobi Nobi Boy's uncooperative elasticity delights me. After years in development, during which critics like myself rubbed our hands together greedily, expecting another masterpiece like Katamari, Namco released the game for the price of a sandwich. The levels were random. The goal was just to stretch and chill. I'll admit, I loved it. In fact, I called it one of the 33 best games of all time on my website actionbutton.net. I called it that because I loved Libble Rabble. And I loved that Namco had published something else even sort of like it. Though even the genius behind Katamari couldn't figure out how to make something like Libble Rabble feel complete. How can you fit enemies into this? How can you fit a plot? How can you fit puzzles? It's like this. Maybe you'd think you could play Libble Rabble better if you had two players, one controlling each joystick. No, you can't. Something about a minimalist game inspires people to think they can beat the system. My game Video Ball, I saw so many jerks think that just because the game used only one analog stick and one button, that they could control two players on one team by holding just one analog stick and using one trigger of one controller each. I never saw anybody even score one goal against two bad or beginner players if they were trying to play it that way. I saw a guy try to do that on a stream. Some guy at some, not gonna name the publication. The game just came out. And he was like,
Hey,
you guys get on the other team and I'll play you with two controllers. And he didn't score a goal. There were just thousands of people watching some idiot scream like a clown with a chemical burn playing my video game the wrong way on one of the arenas I specified in the press release to not play on. Do me a goddamn favor here. Maybe Libble Rabble was more successful than Video Ball. Libble Rabble got a Super Famicom port. Libble Rabble got a Towns Marty port. Nobody ported Video Ball to the Towns Marty. I love Libble Rabble. I dare say I love it more than I love Pac-Man. Certainly spent more time playing it. Though I think I'm not speaking out of turn when I say that not as many people remember Libble Rabble as remember Pac-Man. Why don't more people remember Libble Rabble? Maybe people don't remember Libble Rabble because it's just too much to remember. You're controlling two players in Libble Rabble. The players, they don't even look like anything. They look like little chevrons. Chevrons have no personality. Now, one could make the in-game player avatar a chevron and explain that the player is meant to imagine that chevron as representing their self. One can tell the player, whatever shirt you're wearing, that's your player character's character design. If you want to give your player character a hat, put a hat on, buddy. Boom. You just made DLC, and totally not be kidding about it at all. Though, this was a big ask of some players in 1983. Maybe more people don't remember Libble Rabble because it turns out only a ghostly fine blue line separates simple from not simple enough. Pac-Man is as weird and dense as Libble Rabble. It's just quieter, and it got there first. Nonetheless, today I realized that with Libble Rabble, Toru Iwatani was doing what he'd done with Pac-Man. In his generosity, he gave every game designer willing to pay attention a big, juicy puzzle. Like with Pac-Man, he showed us what was on his mind, and invited us to put it on our minds too. Yet the conversation ended before it could begin. Pac-Man became a brand. the brand rolled on. Eventually, as the final game he ever designed for Namco, Toru Iwatani proved that he could redesign Pac-Man better than anybody. When Iwatani left, some other designers at Namco tried to iterate further on Pac-Man Championship Edition. They called it Pac-Man Championship Edition DX. I called it unholy. Pac-Man Championship Edition DX turned Pac-Man decidedly into a puzzle game. Pac-Man always had a lot of puzzle game in it, though the puzzle aspect existed in perfect, unmessable with proportion to the action and strategizing. Pac-Man Championship Edition DX tries too hard to make you feel like you solved a puzzle by sitting the puzzle right out there in front of you and giving you no other choice than to do what a true Pac murderhead would do, even amid a million worse choices. All Pac-Man CE DX does to deepen Pac-Man's mechanics is subtract most of the distractions. Pac-Man is distractions, however. Remove those and you've just buried the game. In Pac-Man Championship Edition DX, you don't just contend with 4 ghosts, you eat 100 at a time while graphics yell at you. Pac-Man Championship Edition DX is the flawed philosophy of Ms. Pac-Man, with the gain turned all the way up to 10, and the treble turned all the way up to 10. Sure, this fits the modern definition of exciting, satisfying game design, writ large by the likes of Candy Crush and Angry Birds. Though is it Pac-Man? It's not Pac-Man. I realized today that Pac-Man, like Libble Rabble, is supposed to be unfinished. It's supposed to be imperfect. We're not supposed to perfect it. We're supposed to eat it, digest it, and move on. When Iwatani at Microsoft's millions of dollars to behest did perfect Pac-Man, he did it as a mic drop. We didn't need the mic drop. We're actually worse off for it. And that's why, today, I have decided to rank the original Pac-Man above Pac-Man Championship Edition and Ms. Pac-Man. As far as I'm concerned, as of today, upon its 40th anniversary, Pac-Man is officially the best Pac-Man game. In these 40 years, Pac-Man has come a long way since itself. And Libble Labble was Pac-Man 2. Maybe back in 1983, Iwatani should have just made a version of Pac-Man where you control Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man at the same time with 2 joysticks. That sounds like $1 million idea. I have a parenthetical here at the end of the teleprompter. I wrote this just the other day. So this is a note from me about something I did several weeks ago that I'm reading now. When I first wrote the preceding paragraph, I did not yet know that Bandai Namco's iOS Pac-Man app had recently been updated in celebration of Pac-Man's 40th anniversary to include a mode where you control 2 Pac-Mans at once. I'm not making this up. I got a screen recording of it. It's real. Wonderful. This is Namco's 40th anniversary celebration. I'm a genius. I'm a genius, Jerry. And now it's time for the bottom line. Pac-Man has come a long way since itself. According to the lore, when Toru Iwatani joined Namco as a game designer in 1977, he didn't like the growing trend of video games that dealt with space, war, guns, and death. He wanted to make more colorful games about a broader range of topics. He wanted to make fun games that appealed to a wide audience. He made Pac-Man. To hear Iwatani tell it, Pac-Man's design simply happened. He chose the bright ghost colors because he thought they'd attract a female audience. He chose the theme of eating because he found it lively. The ghosts had different behaviors because, to paraphrase Iwatani's words, the game would have been boring if all the enemies just chase you relentlessly. The design of the ghost's mysterious scatter phase happened because it gave the player a break. All the iconic elements of Pac-Man's game design happened as matter-of-fact decisions to make the player's life better. All of Pac-Man's visual design decisions happened in the interest of presenting an alternative to violent video games. Iwatani wanted us to enjoy a game that was simply about movement, yet violence persisted. Despite Pac-Man's global phenomenal success, even Namco kept making games about blowing stuff up. Iwatani offered Pac-Man as a gesture to the world, showing the beautiful blossoming of possibilities for a game whose only player-executed verb was move. Yet when Namco's own designers internalized Pac-Man's deep wisdom, they made games like 1991's Tank Force, which is the closest I think games have ever gotten to a Pac-Man Act Zero. You drive a tank in a maze-shaped city. You can shoot. You fight AI tanks. You have to defend a base. Structures are like the dots in Pac-Man. Destructible terrain. It's got a two-player mode. It's sort of an action proto-MOBA. It's got Pac-Man all over it. On the one hand, I love Tank Force. On the other hand, that's how you do a tribute to Pac-Man. On the third hand, that's too many verbs. Tank Force is emphatically attracting game likers and scaring away all the regular people. And back in 1991, games were about to start needing more regular people. Iwatani's libble-rabble asked would-be game designers again, more loudly this time, to look to the humble joystick. Look at how much you can do just with moving a character around, this time in 8 directions. Yet, like Pac-Man, libble-rabble failed to achieve perfection. Pac-Man's ghosts and libble-rabble's mushroom raccoons, or whatever they are, may possess cutely tuned artificial intelligence paradigms, though they lack something technology can't give us. And this, my friends, is why Fall Guys is Pac-Man 3. This is why I chose to review Pac-Man, because I looked at a GIF on Twitter and said, my God, I pitched this game to Zynga. I'm sorry, yes, Zynga. I'm sorry 1,001 times. Only I called it Let's Jump. Fall Guys is libble-rabble Pac-Man 64 against the Nobi virtual corporealized doughy psychology taffy of 100 invisible players. I had to move out of my apartment 2.5 months ago. I thought I'd be moved into my new apartment in Manhattan 2 weeks later. It's going to have been 3 months since I touched my Steam library when I finally get my computer situated in my new home office. Devolver Digital, I was talking to you about possible sponsorship, about possibly doing some videos for you about your games, and I'm sure you think I just dropped off the face of the earth. Though man, I got a good excuse, and that excuse is landlords. Landlords kept me from sending you a sales pitch. I was going to email you next week, even if you didn't publish Fall Guys. Now you're going to think I'm only emailing you because you published Fall Guys, and I want a piece of that Fall Guys fame.
And now they got goddarn Disc Room. Have you seen Disc Room? It's another game just 100% about movement. It is an explicitly violent video game, though it's about as purely about movement as Pac-Man is. Maybe even more so. Disc Room, come on.
I can't prove it with science, though I know it in my soul that we wouldn't have Fall Guys if we didn't have Pac-Man. I mean, technically, I also know we wouldn't have Super Mario Brothers without Pac-Man, and without Super Mario Brothers, we wouldn't have a lot of games, though for the sake of argument, let's say we wouldn't have Fall Guys if we didn't have Pac-Man. An urban legend has it that Toru Iwatani devised the Pac-Man character's shape after looking down at a pizza from which one slice had been removed. The game in development was already, at the time, about eating. And here before Toru Iwatani was a minimalistic cartoon rendition of a human head in silhouette, opening its mouth to eat. Iwatani has shrugged at this urban legend many times over the years. He said something to the effect of, "Sure, that sounds about right," a couple of times, and the most deeply he personally has ever explained it is he said that he took the Chinese character for mouth, which is a square, like this, and he made it a circle instead of a square. I'm just gonna say I like the pizza story better because I like pizza. You know what I like about pizza? I mean, aside from the fact that, come on. Come on, it's pizza. It's like, right? You know what I like about pizza? You know that I'm going to say something that's not really, you don't need to be convinced. I think we all know what pizza is here, right? Okay. You know what I like about pizza? Pizza is perfect design. Pizza is a circle that becomes triangles. Put a pizza in the center of a round table. Now imagine 8 friends standing around that pizza. The crust provides handles for retrieving one's portion. Pizza is the concept of a friendly gathering rendered into edible material. Pizza is the food equivalent of love. Its simplicity is potent. Pac-Man is the pizza of video games. Forget the Citizen Kane of video games. What's the Pac-Man of movies? Pac-Man isn't a Citizen Kane of games. The Mona Lisa, however, is the Pac-Man of paintings. Notice that we've never seen a film adaptation of the Mona Lisa. Notice that though we've seen a film adaptation of Super Mario Brothers and Mortal Kombat and Double Dragon, we've never seen a film adaptation of Pac-Man. Why not? The reason is simple. Because Pac-Man is a bona fide work of art. Yes, to hear Iwatani describe it, you might think the design process was mundane and driven by common sense. So what? Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel ceiling while lying on a wooden scaffolding. Though we never talk about the scaffolding. We don't even talk about his Pomeranian, which was evidently with him every day for the 7 years he spent painting the Sistine Chapel ceiling.
All right.
So why should we let an analysis-driven design decision-making process disqualify Pac-Man as art? When you mix the game design into this visually thoughtful presentation, when you leave the identity of the ghosts and their hockey box afterworld, the nature of the floating, insatiable, circular glutton under the player's control, and the space-time properties of the nightmare neon maze itself, entirely up to the player's imagination. When you brush-strokingly design the dainty little profound behavior paradigms of the game's 4 bullies, when you subtract a million nanoscopic, crowd-pleasing elements from the very foundation of sports, you wind up saying something immemorial and ethereal, something enduring, something you could never turn into a movie, unless it were an absolute Photoshop joke. Pac-Man is as important as a Rothko, a Jackson Pollock, or a Kandinsky, though he in interviews brushes off Pac-Man's many thoughtful player-friendly game design touches by speaking humble platitudes such as, "The game would have been boring without that." Though it seems like the man has literally no ego. I'd argue Toru Iwatani is the Pablo Picasso of video games on the basis of the original Pac-Man alone. Perhaps because of, not in spite of, the overflow error on 2 of the Ghost's movement patterns. Having said that, I still like Doom better. Finally, I'd like to address one topic I left out of this review: the sound. Pac-Man navigates the maze, his personal limbo, whatever it is, to the cacophony of a whole metropolitan city's worth of police sirens. Why does it sound like a siren? Are the ghosts the cops? After every few levels, a cutely nightmarish cutscene plays to the shrill tune of a freakish banjo riff, and this too is etched deeply on my memory. Pac-Man's bizarre sound lends further mystique to its art. Chief among these blotches in its sonic palette is the Velcro-crushed rubber mattress friction sound of Pac-Man eating a dot. Often we onomatopize this digital lip smacking as Waka Waka, though perhaps Pac-Man's sound designers would encourage us to consider it a Paku Paku. Or maybe it's Waku Waku, the Japanese onomatopoeia for indicating a person enjoys an activity. Whatever the case may be, allow me to champion one particular sound effect, the sound when Pac-Man eats a bonus fruit. Can you have played Pac-Man more than once and not have this sound effect tattooed on your eardrums? Let's forget for a moment that from levels 21 through 255, Pac-Man eats a bonus key. We consider this the fruit sound. It's possible Namco's sound designers intended it to simply signify sensorially generic bonus celebration, though I've never been able to not hear a figment of cuisine in it. To me, this sounds like eating. It sounds like a bassy gulp. Pac-Man's dot-eating sound also sounds like eating, maybe snacking on potato chips. It's a beautiful sound. It's one of the 10 best sound effects in video game history. Though it sounds like popcorn. It sounds frivolous. Now this sounds like eating something good. One of the more sonically generous games in history, Streets of Rage 2, which features a virtuoso musical soundtrack by Yuzo Koshiro and Motohiro Kawashima, in fact uses an extraordinarily similar sound for when the player eats a health restorative item, either a whole roasted turkey, or is it a chicken? I don't know if it's a turkey or a chicken, or a little red fruit on a plate. Maybe that's an apple, maybe it's a cake. I've always called them apple cakes. While playing Pac-Man for the purpose of researching this review, I consumed many bonus fruits. To the detriment of my mental condition, I insisted on playing Pac-Man with earbuds. The wailing siren grated, the dot-eating sustained me, and the fruit consumption offered me a moment's joy. I couldn't stop thinking about the apple cake consumption sound in Streets of Rage 2. So I extracted audio files for both Pac-Man's and Streets of Rage 2's fruit-eating sounds. I lined them up side by side. I analyzed the waveforms with my naked eyes. They're pretty darn close. You don't need to be an audio engineer to look at this and not think, those are pretty darn close. Is Streets of Rage 2 referencing Pac-Man? I absolutely do not doubt it. Which brings us to the big question. Young horses, why doesn't Bug Snacks also reference Pac-Man in the same way? I had to mute your trailer because you insist on having your characters smack their goddarn lips like my little brother eating dry chicken nuggets, like Bug Snacks. Pac-Man is a game about eating, and it has wonderful sounds. Except for the police siren sound. That sounds terrible. I don't talk about this too much, though. I suffer from a little talked about condition called misophonia. My buddy Brandon Sheffield has it too. It comes up sometimes on our podcast, Insert Credit, which you could listen to if you want to. Basically, misophonia means that we experience similar yet uniquely different feelings of horrifying rage when we hear certain sounds. Until me and Brandon Sheffield started talking about our similar situations, we didn't even know it was a thing. Though, it turns out if you get out there on the internet and talk about something, you can find a lot of people who have similar problems to yourself. It's called misophonia, and the most common sound that sets us misophonia sufferers off is the sound of eating. Lip-smacking, salivary sounds in particular make me want to scream. Basically, if you're still having trouble grasping what misophonia is, think of it this way. It's very, very similar to ASMR, except instead of feeling real good when listening to sounds like that, we feel real bad. I used to joke all the time that the reason I immediately moved out of my family's house when I was 18 years old, and the reason I immediately moved so far away from my parents when I graduated college, was that I couldn't stand the amount of noise they made when they eat. I used to joke I moved as far around the world as I could before I was on my way back. I say I used to joke because every time I go visit my family now, I realize it was never a joke. I hate the way they sound when they eat. I think it might have messed me up as a kid. I'm not even kidding. To this day, I can't eat anything without some sonic distraction. The white or brown or purple noise of a busy restaurant just barely suffices. I listen to music at maximum volume even when I'm just eating a protein bar. I always have to have the TV on and as loud as is polite when I'm eating dinner. Wow, I don't even remember what I was talking about before this. This video sure has come a long way since Pac-Man. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that video games were created awesome, that I was born stupid. However, I will not die hungry. Video games forever. Action button.
Well, the video has ended. Yet another video has ended. That's the 4th video that I've made, written, produced, directed, uploaded, premiered on this channel. I have to keep telling myself, I keep wondering, is it 4 or is it 5 videos? How many videos is it? And then I remember that I'm making 2 at the same time, 2 videos simultaneously right now. So there will be another video very shortly following this one. Coming up next, if you're watching this on the playlist that I'm going to make once I told myself when I had 5 videos on this channel that I would make a playlist that would be called All the Videos on this channel. Maybe I'll just call it Action Button Reviews Season 1, because if you might have noticed in this video that I've decided to start breaking these videos into seasons. I mean, I have decided, I make it sound like that's something I decided recently. I decided somewhat long ago that these videos would come in seasons. Obviously, the last video of Season 1 is going to be Cyberpunk 2077. I see Season 1 is covering from the Final Fantasy VII Remake to Cyberpunk 2077. Cyberpunk 2077 got delayed, however, so our season finale is also delayed by default. The next video has always been planned to be Tokimeki Memorial, and it's coming up next on the playlist. That this might or might not be watching this on a playlist. It might not be out at the time you're watching this video. Please wait. It's going to be a couple more weeks before I can upload the Tokimeki Memorial video. I'd intended for the Cyberpunk 2077 video to come up immediately after the Tokimeki Memorial video, though I had an inkling that Cyberpunk 2077 was going to get delayed, so I prepared a little something else for after the Tokimeki Memorial video. We'll see if I manage to pull it off. If CD Projekt Red sends me Cyberpunk 2077 super early, which that would be really nice if they did, I'll just start working on my Cyberpunk 2077 review. If they don't, we'll go ahead and wrap up this bizarre little sub-project that I'm working on. Not too much of an epilogue for this episode because I literally have the Tokimeki Memorial video open in another Premiere project like right over here, and I just want to finish this epilogue, edit it, tack it on to the review, and immediately get back to the next video. You may have noticed during the interludinous segments in this video that my camera and furniture situation was changing rapidly over a short period of time. See if you can figure out what order I shot those interludes in. You'll notice that in the review here, I talk about not having a bed yet. I talk about getting my furniture delivered, having to arrange with the building, all sorts of bureaucratic nonsense we had to go through in order to get all of the stuff in the apartment that we have now. I now have this stupid IKEA shelf dividing the room. You can see this article sofa in the background. You can't see the TV. I got my 77-inch LG CX C10 OLED TV right there. I've got Treasure of the Sierra Madre playing on HBO Max just for lighting purposes. Black and white movies on an OLED TV are incredible. I've had eyeball problems my whole life and always had a difficulty with the contrast in black and white movies, and having infinite contrast, infinitely dark blacks on a TV is really helpful, and I just kind of want to rewatch a whole bunch of black and white movies. I think that's going to be a fun sort of a thing to do. I don't know if you can hear one of my neighbors playing the piano. It was really wild to hear my neighbor playing Chopin's Prelude while I was editing the video, and I had that part in my headphones where I was using that particular piano piece. Very strange. Quite a talented piano player living somewhere on this floor. Wonder if I can find them and ask them if they know how to play the Monday Night Football theme music. Heavy action. What else can I say for an epilogue? I don't really have too much else to say for this epilogue. I'm still waiting on my new desk to arrive. I ordered a desk. It's gonna be pretty nice. So I ordered the desk. Getting my PlayStation 5 and my Xbox Series X this week. Research materials, as the IRS will come to know them in the near future. What else can I talk about in this epilogue? I don't know what else to talk about. Oh yeah, you see that do you see this lamp in the background? I can talk about this lamp. This lamp was here when we moved in. I mean, this lamp is wild. I do not know what kind of Transylvanian junkyard, scrap metal, pig iron, wrought iron, blood iron it's made out of. It weighs like 50 pounds. And we're not using it right now. We're gonna trash can that lamp some point soon. Oh, I know something else. If you want to see something else, I got these Philips Hue light bulbs that you can hook them up to your Alexa. Though I'm not gonna talk to no Alexa. Now check this out. I can make this light. I can change the colors. Look at this. See that? Isn't that wild? I figured this would be fun for like live streaming. I can live stream some more. Live stream Final Fantasy VII. Live stream Final Fantasy VI. Live stream Doom. You got a whole lot of colors on this thing. It's fun. We got them in all the rooms. I'm gonna have a real good time. Oh yeah, anyway, this video is done. Usually these epilogues come across in some kind of a celebratory tone. However, this one is a little, I feel a little disingenuous about recording an epilogue right now because I'm so directly in the middle of the editational process of the Tokimeki Memorial video that I don't feel the way I felt the last 3 epilogues that I recorded, where I just finished a massive thing and was excited to be beginning the process of the next one. I didn't just begin the process of the next one, I pretty much finished it. It's about 80% done. The editing I'm about to do is 20% of the work. As always, the research process is a real big percentage of the time I spend on these videos. This Pac-Man one, I feel like this Pac-Man video is a little bit different in style from the previous 3, and it's definitely a little bit different in style from the next one. It's a bit different in style from the next one. The 2 after that, it's very different from those. I feel like I've come to think of this YouTube channel as a, if I can say so, unpretentiously, unfacetiously, I've come to think of it as a sort of a gallery, a collection, as opposed to whatever it is the typical YouTuber thinks of their YouTube channel. I don't even know if there is such a thing as a typical YouTuber these days. I don't really know if there is such a thing as that. I don't know if that's me. I don't know if I want that to be me. I don't know if that should be me. Though I feel like my YouTube channel is a collection, a curated collection, and I'm glad to put this video into that collection. It pleases me to know that this video will ascend into that collection. However, I really like the next video a lot. The next video is wild. I would like to continue working on that. Rather than prepare you some sort of epilogue-ian surprise here, I just prepared another video that I would like to continue working on. So I'm gonna go ahead and let you go. Slightly shorter epilogue than usual. There was a guy in the comments of the last video who said there were a bunch of parts you could have trimmed down in this video. For example, the epilogue was a little bit long. Like, Lord, man, it's an epilogue. You don't have to watch this. If you're watching it, that's great. Congratulations for finishing watching the video, or congratulations for skipping to this part of the video and expecting something great at the end. Anyway, still a shorter epilogue than usual. I gotta get back to the next video and then the next couple ones after that. I do believe this channel is gonna start getting pretty good. I do believe the next video is definitely gonna be significantly shorter than this one. I know I said they're not all going to be 3 hours. Next one is definitely going to be significantly shorter than this one. Mark my words, or don't mark my words. You don't have to mark my words, because who knows? It could turn out I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, thank you for watching. Goodbye.